and the wildfires. And, you know, coming from Australia, you've got summers.
Yep.
It gets hot. There are wildfires. It's part of it, though we shouldn't, you know, detract from it and say that it's not worthy of attention. We also shouldn't scare the living bejeebers out of people. What do you make of the way the UK has handled that? And also this alert on Friday.
Yeah. Well, look, one of the great joys and eccentricities of England is just to continuously complain about the weather. I'm just annoyed now that this has now moved as a summer tradition as opposed to just being a winter tradition. It would be nice if at least in summer, when now the wonderful benefits of climate change are becoming apparent and you're actually starting to get some good weather here, we didn't just maintain that same level of pessimism. But the thing which was so annoying about the response to the wildfires from Labor is that it's so obviously just an ideological response as opposed to a pragmatic response.
Yeah.
And that straight away, you didn't hear practical solutions to how do you actually address wildfire problems. You know, it would be in the medium term building more water reservoirs. It would be, you know, stopping the ridiculous ban on backburning, which is the central tenet of the wildfire mitigation policies in Australia. And it would be stopping turning England into a tinderbox through misguided climate change policies, which say you need to just keep planting more and more trees and adding to more and more vegetation and stopping cattle grazing, which has led to, I think, it was Ian Botham of all people who put a really good article out about this, a 25% increase in highly flammable vegetation in this country over the last 20 years. To the climate zealots who have turned this country into a tinderbox. And it raises a really interesting point that so often it is these climate change policies which are actually adding to the problem as opposed to taking away from it because they don't think rationally, they think ideologically. That's
such an important point, actually. The contradictions with regards to the zealotry coming from the climate alarmists is off the scale. And they often sow this cognitive dissonance by, instead of, as you rightly point out, identifying the risks and mitigating the risks, they use it as a propaganda lever because they see the outcome and they go, wow, we can use this. We haven't managed to get everybody on board. Paul Cox, Mark Littlewood and Will Kingston are not on board with this zealotry. So we need to pull this lever and make everybody believe they're about to die.
But also think about, let's say your home has been burgled. Do you, as the immediate response to that, say, well, we need to think about, you know, how we're teaching kids in schools to respect private property more? Or do you think about, well, you know, there is a broader crisis of trust in our society? No, you insert a burglar alarm, you call the police, you do the immediate things that will make you safe in the next week. But for some reason, when it comes to the immediate threat of wildfires, they don't go to the immediate solution to the problem. They go to a 50 to 100 year climate change, which may or may not be happening and it may or may not be caused by human action, because simply they want to make a political point. And that's why the left annoy me to tears, because for them, it isn't about making people's lives better. It's about feeling virtuous and feeling like they are the kind of morally pure ones in the room.
Yeah, that's what all this is about. Look, in the old days, had there been some planetary changes, we would have assumed the gods were trying to punish us and sacrificed. So I think we should get back to that. We should get a whole gang of lefties, sacrifice them to the gods of climate change and say, we're sorry, please change. And they'd all be happy to commit themselves to that. What did you make of these alerts, by the way? Did you? I mean, just first of all, I assume this is in Australia because these things are across the Western world. But what did you make of the? I mean, it was totally unnecessary, was it? I don't put words in your mouth. Perhaps you think differently.
No, so I recall a lot of these types of alerts in New York actually when I was living there. I don't actually recall them in Australia to the same extent. In fact, I don't recall them at all. But the problem is on the left is they don't think about the laws of unintended consequences. So here they were going, oh, well, you know what? May as well make people alert around the potential dangers associated with wildfires. But they don't stop to think, right, well, what are the second order consequences of doing that? For example, people turning off the notifications for genuine emergencies or flooding 999 calls. We saw the same thing in COVID where they just rushed to lock down schools, rushed to lock down people in their homes. And they didn't think about the second order consequences of depression and mental illness and the economic problems associated with it. And again, it comes back to an ideological approach to the world as opposed to a pragmatic approach where you would be thinking about those second order consequences. So again, it is very much in keeping with the way that they approach these sorts of problems.
Yeah, anecdotally, and I read in the papers yesterday that the fire service in particular was entirely inundated with calls to the point that they had to put their own message out to say, please only call us if there's an emergency. Don't call us to tell us that your neighbour Derek is having his 4th barbecue of the week and that you are snitching on him in the same way you did in COVID because Derek took more than 1 hour of a walk a day.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you start to notice this stuff, you can put it in the context of a broader political agenda, which is what makes it so annoying. Again, if this was isolated, I wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. But it goes along with a concerted effort by government, by the media, by commentators, by corporates to basically push this climate change agenda. You know, it's little things like, for example, looking at the BBC weather report and on a hot day you see the country just coloured in the deepest, darkest, most sinister red for a 28-degree day or something.
Yes.
And you go, you know, that isn't some, you know, graphic designer in the BBC who's just trying to get a bit more creative. That's a very, very deliberate decision to make people scared about hot weather. And when you start to notice these things, you go, look, again, it comes back to a political point that's trying to be made. And when you're using that now in serious things like an emergency alarm system, where there are consequences for people switching that off, if there is, you know, a terrorist attack in central London, you go, we can't afford this nonsense anymore. We just can't.
Well, always talking common sense. The common senses in our chat are absolutely loving you. Believe it or not, Nanny Lulu's in the chat. There isn't a place you and I can go without saying. So hi from Will and I, Nanny Lulu. Thanks for coming in, Will. We've got to get on with the show, and I've got to get back to Mark. But thanks ever so much for coming in, mate. You're an absolute legend. I'll see you soon, very soon, I hope. Mark, what do you make of that? Hey, we live in a society now where everything's controlled and we can't do anything for ourselves.
Yeah, well, you know, Orwell's predictions have come true, right? That maximum fear and crisis is the best way of controlling the population. That, you know, and therefore people, if you like, the state deliberately exaggerates in order to get your attention. They sometimes admit this, right? So, you know, that nobody will listen if we say, look, there could be a bit of climate change happening, might be a bit of the problem. We're going to have to think about installing a few more flood defences in Norfolk. Everybody rolls their eyebrows. If you get their attention, you have to say, you're all going to die. The world is going to be on fire. Then people stand up and take notice. So we are now governed, if not by lies, by huge exaggerations, basically. And, you know, as the alert thing sort of said, you know, don't be reckless with a barbecue becomes a national emergency. Same happens in my field, Coxie, on the economy. You know, that there's always a permanent crisis on, right? There's never a normal year, let alone a good year. There's always a cost of living crisis or a disaster caused by the war in Ukraine or the war in Iran or God only knows what else. It's completely ludicrous and we've got to resist it. And, you know, Will does a lot with GB News. I love the idea that we should get him to join the team, Paul. The suggestion we could call it the Little Cox and Willie show, right? So, you know, I think we better have Will on as a pretty regular guest. Great suggestion in the chat there. But that's why all of this new media, I think, is taking off. GB News, you know, has been a real challenge to the established, entrenched legacy media and is doing very, very well. The mainstream media, Paul, this is what I want to get onto. I've had quite an experience on the mainstream media this weekend. And you know what? I am starting to get paranoid. I am starting to reach for my tinfoil hat. I think I was totally stitched up. Do you know what I'm talking about, Paul?
Yeah, you had an interview with Channel 4 in which, and by the way, we had done this show in the day, so we were totally aware within your bunker that you have good sound and good lighting above all else, and you can be seen as you are now, looking as if you are alive, Mark. However, as the token righty on a Channel 4 debate show, they seem to depict you very differently.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. So as I say, I'm beginning to become a conspiracy theorist. I want to know what the audience thinks. So let me give you the story here. I mean, to my fans, I'm Adonis, right? I mean, and
not
to,
just
and
your
to
fans. One of the reasons people hate you is because you're Adonis.
And to my big fans, I'm not merely Adonis, I am the Donis, right? And look, so, you know, I try to make sure my lighting's kind of okay. All right, I'm a little bit pale skinned, I grant you that. I try and put a little bit of makeup on. I'm not shy about that. I don't think makeup should only be for women. But on Channel 4, from exactly the slot in my bunker from where I'm speaking to you now, Coxie. I did a podcast for them on Friday, and it was all about the fallout from the Clacton by-election. Where does Farage go from here? Did he have a good result? Did he have a bad result? What's going to happen to the investigation? Supposing the Standards Committee find him guilty, all of the rest of it. And look, Channel 4, I knew, would likely attract an audience that would not be sympathetic to my views. But so what? I love the sound of my own voice so much, I'm willing to put it anywhere. And I'm going to show viewers now. We got quite a lengthy clip of my interview. I think I put forward a good case. But as Paul, as you and I know in television, isn't the metric that it's kind of 80% what you look like and 20% what you sound like? But
Yes.
Anyway, try and listen to my argument. I know some of you might not have us on visual, but if you got us on visual, also watch it. It is a 2-minute clip, but maybe we can play clip number 6, and then I'll get into my conspiracy theory about Channel 4 and how they treated me. I wasn't really trying to criticise the media. I think it's perfectly reasonable journalism to reveal that Nigel Farage received this gift of £5 million from Christopher Harborne, as long as you haven't used any illegal tactics or methods to get that information. That's a story that's quite probably in the public interest, the sort of thing people might want to know about him.
And reasonable to examine it through the parliamentary investigative procedures.
Well, hang on. That's where I start to draw the line a little bit. I think our standards procedures are desperately wanting. I mean, wholly flawed, I would go so far as to say. That when you actually start looking through what the rules are, they are open to a million interpretations. When
They're
is
all
a
we've
gift
got, Mark.
personal?
They're all we've
Sorry?
got. They're all we've got.
Well,
for bent
well, fine,
MPs,
I would
not
get-
suggesting for a moment that
Well,
Mr
no, they
Farage
are
is
not all
bent
we've
or
got.
otherwise.
No, I'm afraid they are not all we've got. What we tend to rely on is the democratic decision of voters, not the judgment of a regulatory quango, largely policed by political opponents of the person they're investigating. They are emphatically not all we have got. We have now, right in front of us, the judgment of the electorate of Clacton. That's what we've got. Now, I was
Yes, but
absolutely shocked.
that's the one. They're an electorate, and that's good and proper. They don't
Yes, well, they
investigate.
decide
Are you
MPs
saying?
in a
Are you
democracy.
saying that this
They
body?
decide who the MP is in a democracy.
Indeed, and in a democracy, you're saying that Parliament shouldn't have a watchdog if they think someone's been breaking the rules. Is that really what you're saying?
Well, I would like us to go back to the old rules, that if you have broken the law to the extent that you are imprisoned for 6 months, you are ineligible to run for Parliament. I think the law was something like that. So if Farage has committed some sort of crime that would land him in prison for 6 months, I think that would disqualify him. What we've actually got is the chairman of the Labour Party, Bridget Phillipson, saying now the, quote, distraction of the by-election is over. Now the distraction of a democratic vote is over. The decision can now be made by the Standards Commission.
Right.
So who's going to decide here who the MP for Clacton should be?
Okay,
Is it
okay.
going to be the electorate of Clacton, or is it going to be a 14-person committee populated largely by Nigel Farage's opponents? I think
Right.
it should be the former. A good number of other people like Bridget Phillipson think it should be the latter.
Simply scan the QR
welcome
code
back
or
from the
click
dead,
the
Mark.
link in the description.
Hang on, we've got
Absolutely.
Mike Graham coming
Out.
across in the background. Okay, we managed to stop that. Sorry, Paul. Yeah, what did you make of the? Well, firstly, did
Well,
you
I
like
said,
my argument?
First of all, the argument is very strong, very compelling, and very well put forward, articulated as well as you always do, my good sir. But I said, welcome back from the dead. Pooch, whilst we were watching that, said you look like Data from Star Trek. I know you're anti-Star Trek because you're pro Doctor Who, but quite stark, particularly not at first, because at first it was quite interesting because if you're viewing here, you could see how Mark looks now in exactly the same position with exactly the same lighting. So that was a contrast. But then when they put the 4 box up and your other 3 panelists and the hosts were in picture, you could see that they had obviously deliberately tampered with the way you looked, Mark, as the dastardly right winger.
Yeah. So look, we've got some images to show that, and I want the viewers to let me know whether they just think I'm being a bit thin-skinned and snowflakey, or whether they think I'm onto something. So we've got a picture of me broadcasting on UK Live Online from noon that day. That is image 5. So we can pull up image 5.
There it is. Look at
There
that.
you
What
go.
a-
Right there I am at noon, my usual devilishly handsome
I've got a semi.
self. Right now, Paul. you know, you and I are of an age where we worry about the aging process. You know, when you're in your 40s or your 50s, you know, things start to go wrong. You know, you start to ache a bit. You feel like you're aging really quickly. But I don't think anyone has ever aged as quickly in just 4 hours as I did. So let's pull up image 6. Look at this
4 hours
contrast.
later. Look at me. This is not even the same bloke. I think they made your Adam's apple bigger. You look like a trans woman.
It's just nuts, isn't it? I mean, I can't. And so, you know, I've reached the conclusion. You mentioned Data from Star Trek. Some other people were saying that, but I was thinking more of a Lord of the Rings character. Let's have a look at image 7.
Gollum. Absolutely brilliant.
I mean, it's pretty extraordinary. And then, if you contrast it with the other guests, you've already mentioned this, Paul. If we pull up image 8, you can see the chap interviewing me and the others. I mean, what is going on here? So, what do you think,
done, Mark?
Coxie?
What have you done? Look, and what I think is it's absolutely outrageous. Look, platform you, great. That's a tick in the box. Thank you very much. And of course, you and I largely work on what would be considered right-wing media. So we get to express our views and we get people, a lot of the audience agree with us. It's great to be the other way around. It's a sport, it's interesting, and it's good for Channel 4 to have done that. However, they've not played you fairly there. That's not Queensberry rules. They've set you up to deliberately look bad. Are you doing anything about this, Mark? Because I don't think this should just be passed by.
Yeah, well, first thing I've done is to send the evidence that I've just shared with you. I sent over the weekend to the producer, or at least the guy who booked me onto the show. I don't know if he's a producer, and he's read it but has not yet commented. So I've asked for an explanation. But so I'll give him he might have to take that upstairs, I guess. I'm going to chase him later on this afternoon and ask for an explanation, because the other thing too is, you know, when I was logging on to the show, you know, they did all these sort of sound checks and digital checks and asked me to move a bit to the left or the right or to move my camera a bit, you know, so they were clearly attentive to what the look was and trying to get it right, I assumed, you know, to make sure that we were all the same. But the other three look like they've just come back from holiday. And as somebody says there, I look like Darth Sidious from Star Wars, right? I mean, and I refuse to believe, especially compare it to now, that this was due to my camera setup. And they had 5 or 10 minutes to help me correct that if it was. So some people are saying off common. But there you go. Look, let's see what explanation they come out with. But I am pretty shocked, Coxie. I am pretty shocked.
Yeah, well, we'll all just take that in while we listen to Fiona McLeod. And let's take some news just for now. Thank you very much, Mark.
Hello, Fiona McLeod here with your Monday bulletin from Moscow. Overnight, Russia reported one of the largest Ukrainian drone assaults of the year, with hundreds of drones targeting the Moscow region. Meanwhile, back in the UK, Reform UK has set out plans for a major overhaul of the benefit system, aiming to cut £50 billion a year. This includes banning most welfare payments for foreign nationals, even those with EU settled status, and replacing personal independence payments with a tighter system focused on the most severe cases. Rain is finally on the way after the UK's 5th heat wave of the summer, which peaked at 38 degrees Celsius and triggered widespread wildfires. The Met Office says heavy rain will soak around 60 towns and cities on Tuesday, bringing cooler, fresher conditions. Elsewhere, residents are starting to return home after devastating wildfires in places like Stourbridge. British athletes have enjoyed a strong finish at the European Championships, and the Met Police has apologised after a data error exposed email addresses of alleged Mohammed Al-Fayed victims. Увидимся позже, alligator.
Well, lovely baps and news there from Fiona McLeod. It's just after the first hour, so thank you for staying with us. We really do appreciate you. I love you long time. And one thing we haven't mentioned so far is Jason Arday. Now, that's not because we've chosen not to. That's because we just wanted to put it a little bit later in the show. Now, of course, Jason Arday caused much controversy recently by essentially being a fantasist and then being promoted as that fantasist to the king of the DEI selections at Cambridge University. Well, very sadly, he took his own life on Friday afternoon. Mark, what did you make of this over the weekend?
Yeah, well, Coxie, we both talked about it, and look, it is a tragedy, right? And I think that tragedy hits a bit harder because it was a farce. I mean, laughable. I mean, comedic almost, even though it raised serious issues about DEI that has morphed into an absolute tragedy. Nobody wanted Jason Arday to lose his life. We presume take his own life. Absolutely horrific. And Andy Burnham said over the weekend. And at face value, I think it's kind of just about fair enough that now is a moment for reflection, that we shouldn't leap to judgment and all of this sort of thing. And I sort of agree with the Prime Minister, but only if you take him absolutely literally. A moment of reflection, a few minutes to put your head in the right place. Because I was shocked when I heard it. I mean, it's grim, isn't it? But I only needed a few minutes to start to think through what I thought of it. So reflection by all means, but nobody should require more than a few moments. Oftentimes, I think, Coxie, when people ask for a moment of reflection, they're actually trying to close down an argument. They don't mean a moment of reflection. They mean a month of reflection. Yeah,
deeply coded language for this is your time to shut up. We've been wanting you to shut up. Now look what you've done. Shut up. Now, I immediately reacted to this, and I think it's clip number 2, which is my tweet. Don't want to be too self-indulgent. Clip image number 2. Absolutely right. Let's have that up on screen, and I'll read this out to you. So I said, terribly sad news for a man who was elevated and championed by the DEI establishment, only to be left incredibly vulnerable when serious questions emerged. Jason Arday should never have been put in a position where the pressure and scrutiny could become so overwhelming. Everybody deserved better in this case, especially Jason Arday. Mark, that was my period of reflection. Now, largely from people that was met with, okay, nice thoughts. Lots of people wanted to point out what they thought of Jason Arday. But one particular person on the internet who's very well known for this sort of thing, the Queen grifter herself, Narinder Kaur, responded. Can you imagine how she responded, Mark? Let's get that clip up if we possibly can. I'm not going to say it. F off. Didn't the channel you work for absolutely go for him? F off. So immediately, Narinder there, God bless her open gusset underpants, she decided that she was just going to go straight for the jugular and has grifted this to the nth degree. I don't want to spend too much time on this. However, this seems to have enabled the left to react in this way, Mark. Have you seen this yourself?
Yeah, I have. I loved your tweet or your X. I don't know what we call these things these days, Paul. How long did it take you to gather your thoughts and put that out? Was it 30 seconds, 30 minutes, an hour?
I actually did it whilst I was hosting a comedy club, and the first act was on stage when the news came out. I'd just done about 15 minutes myself. They're coming out for 20, 25 minutes. It was in that 20 minutes. So I just sat there and thought, immediately I thought, it's not that I want to capture the narrative. I wanted my view of this to be sympathetic, but also to point out how I believed it came to this. So I probably paused for 5 minutes and wrote the tweet in that time.
Right. Well, Paul, I had the advantage of reading your tweet, which then helped my own moment of reflection, and then gave my own thoughts, which I think chime with yours. That's image number 3. If people want to see what I said, I probably waited, I can't remember, half an hour or so. The death of Jason Arday has turned this sinister, sometimes farcical tale into something far, far worse. Those who pandered to and indulged with unalloyed enthusiasm this man's ludicrous fantasies with unconcealed glee need to be held to account properly. A sickening and very saddening tale of the state of Britain today. And that was my view. Your thoughts helped me solidify those, Paul. And I think those who are broadly on our side of the spectrum have been very, very fair-minded about it. In fact, we've got a tweet from image number 4, a tweet from somebody called Ad Hoc on Adam Linley on Twitter. I can't help comparing the right-wing commentariat's respectful comments this evening with what the left-wing response would have been had David Starkey been overwhelmed by the loss of his Cambridge job after the Darren Grimes interview and the ensuing media storm. And I think that is true and correct. But the people like Narinda are now determined to blame Arday's death on the media. This is ludicrous in my view. Let's do a thought experiment. Supposing, rather than exposing him as a fraudster, which he clearly was, and a successful fraudster, you can argue about how brilliant he was about pulling the wool over people's eyes, or how willing they were to have the wool pulled over their eyes. And I think that's what we've got to get to the bottom of. But it's a sort of an extraordinary tale, isn't it? Because you assume that to protect Arday, what should have been done? No questions should have been asked about his fraudulent activity, no exposure of his plagiarism, and the claims he was making were just so wild. I mean, so extreme and he had been pushed forward by the mainstream media and the left-wing media as a public celebrity. You know, he eagerly walked into the public spotlight. Most academics are not well known and do not appear on shows such as Question Time. So he had become a public figure, elevated clearly enormously beyond his talents. What were we to do? Never to expose this in order to indulge him, rather than to cause his collapse from his job and ultimately the tragic decision it seems to take his own life. What should we have done? Should we have given him the Nobel Prize for Literature to make him feel better about himself? Should we have elevated him to be, I don't know, Secretary General of the United Nations? Those sort of things could have been done. We could have continued forever to go along with the lie. And my takeaway from it is, if only Cambridge hadn't gone along with the lie in the first place, a very easy lie to expose, this man would still be alive. And Cambridge University and the people who appointed this man and then protected him and closed their eyes and their ears have a monumental amount to answer for.
As very well put, by the way, Mark, and congratulations to you for putting that together. That was fantastic. But as is so often the case with these things, it's the people that notice that are charged as guilty. So let's just say you and I have had discussions on this on air. I'm essentially a satirist, you're a commentator. You and I have a humorous vibe. It's what makes this show successful. It's what our viewers and listeners enjoy most about us. We're entitled to point out that the emperor has no clothes. That didn't go too far. There is a line, I'm sure. It never became nasty. And I would ask people to be respectful to a man who was, of course, a father. But at the same time, and I'll discuss this more in Cox's box a bit later on, so please stay tuned for that. But at the same time, we have every right, particularly in today's society, to hold people accountable, Mark. So it's, you know, if you're going to be in a position, much like you and I are now, where we are foist upon the great people of Great Britain and we share our opinions and things are told about us, we can be held to account, Mark, can't we?
Yes. I mean, I think it's reasonable to ask, I think it's reasonable to ask questions that pertain to people's public life, okay? So we put forward opinions and views, and if people want to, I don't know, cross-examine what I've said about economics and prove it wrong, or any claims I've made about my life, you know, if I had never actually been the Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs, if I'd just made that up, I think it would be perfectly reasonable for a journalist of any ideological stripe to come forward and say, you know, dear Mark, do you have any evidence that you ever worked for the Institute of Economic Affairs? Because we can't find any. And they said they've never heard of you. I don't think the appropriate response to that is to call the police because my mental health is suffering. You have to answer those questions if you put yourself in the public domain. I think it's reasonable not to answer questions that don't directly relate to your public work. I don't think it's reasonable to ask people about their family life, you know, their health, their health status, their sex life, whatever. I don't think that's reasonable because it doesn't pertain to the claims that you are making. But what was incredibly sinister about this was journalists who were making legitimate inquiries about an extremely high-profile academic were not just batted away by Cambridge University, but batted away by the police. that asking legitimate questions of a serious academic became a police matter. I mean, none of the journalists were charged or arrested, but they were told to back off. This goes back to what really the same theme, Coxie, that we were talking about with regard to the national alerts and all this sort of stuff. We are living, as I was saying last week, in gaslit Britain. People are telling us lies and amplifying them, and you are punished if you will not go along with the lie. And a safer, more robust Britain would be one where we expose the lie very early doors. Jason Arde could have had a perfectly fulfilling, decent life, long and decent life, could have done good for humanity. But because a lie was not exposed, tragedy and farce have both been the consequence. And I know that everybody says lessons will be learned. Let's hope the right lessons will be learned, because this was not an issue around a free media asking legitimate questions of a man who had been thrust into the public spotlight and had warmly embraced it. It was a problem of living the DEI lie and accelerating that, dialing it up to 10, dialing it up to 11 out of 10. And if that's the lesson that we take away from this, then tragic as it is, maybe Jason Arde has not died in vain. But if we move to another Leveson-type regulation of the press, things are going to get worse, not better. Grim, bleak, tragic. I treated it as comedic last week. Now it really is a horror show.
Well, very well said again, Mark. Incredible words there. Look, we already know that the left are going to capitalise on this. There's no other way to put it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. One place you are going to get honest opinions is here on UK Live Online. Under no circumstances will the Littlewood and Cox show ever capitulate just because someone says that what we're saying is in any way hurty words. We don't care. We never set out our stall to be in any way personal about people. You know, I very rarely mention my sex life. There's not a lot to say, Mark, and so I shouldn't be held accountable for it.
We were doing a 2-hour special on it on Thursday.
We are
Cox.
doing a 2-hour special. Largely, it's images of someone else's sex life, Mark.
You should see the clips and images we've got for it, Paul. It's going to be a great show. People won't be able to take their eyes off it. Trust me. You know, we've been monitoring your OnlyFans channel with great interest, my friend.
Yes, that will be happening, by the way. Pooch has contracted me to make sure that I do open up an OnlyFans site. But Mark, I think you need to tease something here. Something will be coming up, which the answer will be after our next guest. But what is it you want to tell us today, Mark?
Yeah, so my metric of madness today, viewers, as you know, each day I try to find a number, a statistic, a ratio, something mathematical that indicates the mad world or country that we live in. Typically, it's about the United Kingdom, and it is today. And my number today is £122 billion. Now, I know oftentimes people always think, you know, when you're into billions, trillions, squillions, it's very hard to make sense of the numbers. So let me put £122 billion in context. If you took £122 billion and shared it out equally to every man, woman and child in Britain, it would be £1,750 each. That's what £122 billion amounts to. That's my metric of madness. Very interested to know whether Coxie can guess what that metric indicates. Very interested to know if anybody in the chat can work out what that £122 billion indicates. And I'm going to give you a clue, common sensors. I'm going to give you a clue, Coxie. It's sort of a little bit associated with Robert Jenrick's announcement today, his new reform policy. It's kind of connected to that. There's a generous clue for you.
Very interesting. Well, my guess is probably going to be associated to me, actually, because MLB Peace Planet, good afternoon, sir. No, good morning, sir. I don't know where I am. He said, talking about my sex, our 2-hour chat about my sex life, he said, the first hour is Cox getting his socks off. And then he gives himself a ha, ha, ha to simulate laughing at his own joke. Well done, MLB Peace Planet. So 122 billion ibuprofens is what I would need for the second hour to be of any use to the lady in mention. Mark, that's what I'm going to go with for now. But we've got our next guest. Mark, we'll be back with you straight after that. Keep thinking, common sense is £122 billion. What could that possibly mean? But our next guest is Steve N. Allen, comedian, scientist, all-round lover extraordinaire. How you doing, Steve?
Do you know what? That is exactly what I asked for the intro. Absolutely
Yes.
spot on. I did ask for lover to be listed above scientist because I've not done science for quite a while, and yet I make the love all the time.
That
Metaphorically.
voice, Steve. If I wasn't, I could well become homosexual as a result of that voice, Steve.
That's
It's
my
giving me
long-term
tingles
project.
where I shouldn't have them.
We've not had them for a while. Those ibuprofen will help. That's what you got going on down there.
Look, Steve, you're a scientist. I'm a doctor. Let's talk science. What? By the way, this comes from, I did a Mike Graham show live last week when we were in Clacton, and Mike introduced me as the eclipse expert, and I completely butchered the statistic. The fact that the reason you get a full eclipse of the sun is that from our perspective, is that the sun is 400 times wider than the moon, and it's 400 times further away, so it fits perfectly. I completely butchered that, and ever since then I've been known as Dr. Cox. But you're an actual scientist, Steve. What did you make? First of all, did you enjoy the eclipse last week? And what did you make of it from a scientific perspective?
From a scientific perspective, it's nothing more than lining things up in order. It's no greater than when someone walks in front of the telly when you're trying to watch it. That's literally all that happens. This is not even fancy science, really. This is not even some kind of Einsteinian thing. This is Euclidean. This is the Greeks nailed this. Oh, look, a thing gets in front of another thing and you can't see it. I know I should care. I know it's the kind of thing where, Patrick Moore back in the day would have made me feel all excited about it. I don't know, like the eclipse in the 90s, I did feel excited by it, but I was a child. As a grown-up, I'm like, oh yeah, that thing that we thoroughly understand has happened again. Woo! Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask about it. I don't have emotions. That's part of the problem.
Woo! Very good, Steve.
Do you know, that's all it was. Look, I understand how a basic civilization could see that and think like, big thunder wolf god bad. He upset. But we've moved on from that. Do you know what I mean? As soon as you understand what happens, you know what a moon is, you know what a sun is, you nail the whole thing about which one's in the center of this particular system. This is hundreds of years ago. There seems to be no more excitement. You know what I mean? There's nothing else to discover about eclipses. There's not going to be a major breakthrough in eclipse technology. We get it now. I mean, it's a bit nicer when you see like the transit of Venus and things like that. Even then, I'm like, yeah. Here's what got me, right? I was looking at the eclipse using my mobile phone and a pair of sunglasses. So you just see it on the screen. And then I realized I could also see way better pictures of any eclipse on the screen. That's how phones work. They're connected to the internet. So I don't know. It's thoroughly pointless.
Talking of mass excitement, Steve, I assume you received the alert on Friday evening. Were you anywhere? I mean, I was at a comedy gig. I was just about to go on stage. It went off, and then of course I was hosting. So throughout the period of me hosting, 10 or 15 minutes up top, and then the whole of the first act, these things were going off. Did you have a similar experience, Steve?
Yeah. So I got mine bang on the 7 o'clock thing when I was waiting to get on a train, which is good news. It means I've been selected as one of the people who will survive the oncoming apocalypse. If you didn't get your message till 10:30, bad news. You are the cannon fodder. We will be eating you. But what can you do? You didn't get the right social credit score. You're not in the top tier. But so I got to the gig, same deal. I was hosting. I'm on stage. I'm just being heckled by the flipping government. And look, when I was at the train station and I heard it go off, I remembered the sound from when we did the test. So I heard that two-tone kind of noise, and I thought, this is it. Putin's dropped the big one. I've got 3 minutes left to live. I'm asking other people on the train station if they want to make love twice. And they went, and then I actually read the thing. And all it was is just like, oh, it's been a bit dry lately. It was the kind of message that you get from like an old woman at a bus stop. But the government sent it through top-tier terrifying alert system. There's that phrase like, oh, this meeting could have been an email. Well, that national terrifying alert could have been an email. Even then, I'd been a bit annoyed, but at least it wouldn't turn up with a noise. It's terrifying.
It was a lot, wasn't it? Now, as we said before, I am a doctor. You talk about alarmism there. Obviously, I'm very worried about climate change. I'm very worried because the Earth is flat. The moon is made of cheese, and I don't want melted cheese all over the Earth, Steve. But with regards to climate change, and the side effect, which seems to be climate alarmism, but particularly from our left-wing friends. Steve, you're someone who understands this well and probably should comment on this. I haven't prepped you for this at all, so do apologise for that, sir. But First of all, what do you make of what's going on with regards to net zero, the reaction of climate alarmism, and what it's doing to us in terms of scaring the living bejeebers out of our population, Steve?
Yeah, I think you need to split it into two separate things. There's the actual question of what would be happening to the climate, and then there's the question of almost the economic, the social, the panicky side of it, which does not need to be linked to it. So I can I've watched some Sabine, whatever her name is, Sabine Hofstadter, where she tries to explain. It really is difficult to understand how carbon dioxide, which is a symmetrical molecule, but you require molecules to not be symmetrical to be greenhouse, and it is. So you then, first of all, you have to understand vibrational modes of a triatomic molecule. So already it's hard to get into it. Then it's all to do with the area under a graph of vibrational energy, absolute nightmare. So it's not just as easy as this gas makes it hot. When you get your head around that, you can kind of understand that, yeah, clearly there is a greenhouse effect. Like, honestly, there is. Otherwise, we would not have the climate we have. The reason we're not like Mars and Venus is we've got a gas that stays around that interacts with photons. So that is just a true thing. So then you can ask the question, if we have more of it, will it make a difference? People love to quote that stat that carbon dioxide is only 0.04% of the atmosphere. But as soon as you've discounted oxygen, which is a symmetrical molecule, nitrogen, those two are 99% of the atmosphere. So 99% of the atmosphere could never be a greenhouse gas anyway. So actually, you're already on the edges. So you disprove nothing by saying, oh, it's 0.04. It used to be 0.03. So it's actually a bit of a chunk of a change. But all of that does not require that we solve it by bankrupting ourselves. It's what I love about it is that they go, oh, there might be some change in climate. What should we do about it? Use some technology to make ourselves more efficient? No, let's throw ourselves back to the olden days when, what was it? They didn't want us to have underfloor heating. That was the ban. Yes. The Romans had underfloor heating, for crying out loud. We don't have to take ourselves back to anything with a BC in it. Do you know what I mean? It's thoroughly ridiculous. So I think when we watched Tomorrow's World growing up, you presumed the future was going to have some sort of a electric car based thing, right? That shouldn't really be an eco thing. The Jetsons were never still going to be going around. You know, the future, you won't be powering yourself by explosions of the essence of distilled dinosaur. At some point, we'll be moving on from oil. Maybe not right now. But in the future, I love a bit of that. The fact that we've got this obsession with trying to terrify ourselves, like the eco people now refer to it not as climate change, climate catastrophe. And what was the other one? Climate boiling. You idiots. Here's what bothers me about it, right? Everything that is a gas has already boiled. You know that the air that's above the Antarctic, quite cold, beyond its boiling point. Boiling doesn't necessarily mean hot. It's a phase transition between liquid and gas. You're right. You've triggered me sciencey nerdiness now. Oh, I can't get out of it.
This has to be a common theme. I think every Monday morning I'm going to have science with Steve. Look, Steve, we've got to go. We've got a pretty packed show. Before we do go, tell us where we can find you, mate.
Well, I mean, other than just like hanging around the local Gregs, you can track me down on YouTube. I do a little streaming thing where I tend to not rant this much about science, maybe. youtube.com/@Mr. Stephen Allen. Always a pleasure.
Thanks, Steve. Top man, very funny, top scientist. See you very good. See you very soon, mate. Look after yourself and take care. Good. Mark, before we go to your metric of madness, saw one guess in the comments from Lisa Harrison 264 while you're away that said 122 billion quid. Is that PIP payments for children from cousin marriages?
Right. Good guess, but no. Few other guesses. Steve Primrose says, is it the amount spent on PIP? Ruben V5H, total government spend on benefits for mental health. Pretty good guess. Joe B. Glenn there, not a bad guess. 122 billion, the entire annual cost of the state pension. Actually, it's pretty close, but the entire annual cost of the state pension is 146 billion pounds. So the 122 billion wouldn't cover it. Bar tab in the Houses of Parliament. Great guess from Amanda. John Grammatic said what Lord Alley has spent on Labour MPs, 122 billion. All pretty good and very accurate guesses, but we know what it's time for now, don't we? We know it's time for the explanation and clip number one.
It's time for Mark's metric of madness.
Here's my metric of madness, 122 billion. This is the amount in real terms that the welfare bill has increased since the turn of the millennium, since the year
My
2000.
goodness.
In real terms, I have
That's
taken
incredible.
account of inflation. So at the millennium, in 2026 money, taking account of inflation, the welfare bill was £212 billion. It is now £334 billion. So that is a rise of 122 billion quid in real terms, inflation taken care of. So what do I mean by welfare payments? Just so people know exactly what I'm defining here, these are what economists call transfer payments. They're not the government providing you with a service, for example, healthcare. That's all in the health budget. This is just the government moving money around, giving you housing benefit, giving you a state pension, giving you personal independence payments or the like. It is cash, essentially issued to you in welfare receipts. That's how I'm defining the welfare bill. Transfer payments is what they're called. So the cost of the welfare state is now £4,771 per person per year, a rise of 112 billion in real terms since 2000. What's crazy about this, of course, common sensors and Coxie, is we have got measurably richer since the year 2000. So there should be less poverty to have to deal with, right? The richer we get, the more people you'd expect are being pulled out of poverty, that there's fewer and fewer people that need assistance. We haven't got as richer as I would have liked over the past quarter of a century or so, because economic growth has been disappointingly low, but we have got richer, and quite measurably. So why is more and more having to be spent on welfare? And look at it this way. If you could imagine, and I know this is the sort of exercise that a government system is very, very likely to fail at, but just imagine that we accept that a certain tranche of the population are in need. Let's say, I don't know, the bottom 10% need our support, for sake of argument. Pick your number. Do you think it's the bottom 10%, the bottom 1%, the bottom 20%? I'm going to say 10% for the sake of argument, and that the other 90% can stand on their own 2 feet, can muddle through if the going gets tough, can dip into their savings or whatever, but there's a 10% at the bottom that we really need to help. Well, if you took the whole welfare bill and just gave it to that bottom 10%, nobody in the top 90% gets a penny. We focus it all on that bottom 10% that we've magically identified. You could give each and every one of those people in the bottom 10% 47,700 quid a year, right? Poverty should be eviscerated overnight. That is measurably more than the average household income, by the way. But if you could focus it and target it, that's what you could give to every single individual in the bottom 10%. And it's not like these people have got zero, right? They often, these people have some form of modest income anyway. You could give them the best part of £48,000 each every single year. So how on earth have we allowed the welfare bill to climb to this level, and still people say there is a problem of poverty in Britain? You know what? If 334 billion quid a year won't crack it, I don't think adding another 122 billion onto it will either. So we are pouring money into an enterprise that we know is failing. It is getting more and more expensive every single year. Something drastic needs to be done about it. I do know, while we've been live online, Robert Jenrick has been unveiling his proposals to make sure that it's much harder to qualify for PIP, personal independence payments. He thinks he can save £57 billion a year. That's a chunky slice of money. But even under Robert Jenrick's very bold proposals, we are only cutting back less than half of the growth in the welfare bill that we have seen since the year 2000. Absolute misuse of resources because we know it isn't working. I'm not against helping the poor. I'm just saying we've got the evidence before our eyes, Coxie and common sensors, that this ain't doing it. If you can't abolish poverty with that sum of money that could get the best part of 48 grand a year into the hands of everyone in the bottom 10%, then I think the system is broken. We need to go back to scratch. There is terrible waste, or as Ronnie Reagan was fond of saying, somewhere there must be some overhead. That's my metric of madness for today, Coxie.
That was a barnstorming metric, Mark. That really, I mean, the comments have just gone wild. We've actually had a super chat from the Shepherd. I'm sure we'll get that up on screen shortly. He said 8.4 million on universal credit working, question mark, question mark, question mark. Great point. Many people pointing out things like the pension shouldn't be considered as a benefit if you paid in for 50 years. That said, one of the reasons that our welfare bill is so high is not just because it includes pension, it's because pension money is going to people that didn't contribute for 50 years. It's going to people that maybe only contributed for 4 or 5 years and haven't been here that long, Mark. It's extraordinary. It's not a path we can continue on without requiring a bailout from the IMF. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you cannot continue on this path. Things which are unsustainable economically eventually don't get sustained. So eventually you run out of road. Nobody quite knows when that will happen. The state pension is a really interesting point, or at least, you know, any form of benefits to the elderly is a really interesting point. So let me break that down. As I say, it's 146 billion pounds a year is being paid out in state pensions at the moment. So you've still got a residual welfare bill of the best part of 200 billion, even if you totally protected the state pension. Now, Paul, I get the argument. It's not an unfair argument that people say, I've paid in all of my life. Now I'm taking out because I've paid national insurance all of my life. You know, surely I now get my state pension. That is fair and reasonable. The problem is that the government didn't invest this money. They ran a Ponzi scheme. This isn't like paying into your pension, a private pension that you might have with a pensions company organised by some sort of financial independent organisation. There you put your money aside, they invest it, you decide whether you want them to go kind of risky or cautious or somewhere middle of the road, and you can see your pot growing year on year. That's not what the government did with your national insurance stamps. They spent it. They did not invest it. They did not put it aside as a nice little nest egg. And even if they had Coxie and common senses, the truth of the matter is it would not have grown to the extent that we are being generous with the state pension, which is tripled locked. On most estimates, on the pension, the cohort of people over the age of 60 are going to take out 50% more than they put in. That's to say, you know, you should be given £1. That's what you put in. As a cohort, it will be different for different individuals. If you've paid a lot of tax over your life, you would have paid in more than you're taking out. If you paid a limited amount, less. But if you were to take the whole cohort of people over the age of 60, in rough and ready terms, we are now paying out 50% more than would have been yielded had that money been properly saved and invested. But it wasn't properly saved and invested. It was squandered. On the other hand, I think you've got to say that when we're looking at the elderly population, you can't expect them to make major lifestyle changes. You can't say to an 84-year-old, you know, well, I know you like sitting at home watching television, but get off your arse and get into the workforce. We clearly can't do that. So I think there should be some big protection for the elderly population, but we should be honest about the numbers. We are paying out more than they paid in. That means the burden is put onto the people who are still in the labour force. But even if you ring fence that state pension, 146 billion of it, you're still looking at another 200 billion pounds nearly, a little shy of 200 billion that's been showered out to people who are not of pensionable age. That's a stunning number. Something's got to be done about it. Robert Jenrick's taken a step in the right direction today, but it only gets us halfway back to the year 2000, which was hardly an era of Dickensian workhouses,
Exactly.
was it, Cox?
Exactly. Look, absolutely brilliant stuff, Mark. Look, I personally want to distance myself from any criticism of pensioners. Pensioners obviously make up a great deal of our viewership. Also, my harem, 97.8% WASPy women. And I'm still very fuming that they weren't able, for 6 years in some case, not to claim their pensions, which meant that I had to go without biscuits for a very, very long time. What time is it for now, I wonder? It's time for Cox's Box. Play the clip.
Let's find out what's in Cox's box.
Well, common sensors, today I wanted to talk about Jason Arday's legacy, not in the way that many people at the vigil, which is at Trafalgar Square tonight, we'll talk about him, but a much more important legacy. A book written by George Orwell in 1949, as we all know, called 1984, has become very much the Bible of our times, which is terrifying in many ways. And a line from that book struck me during my moment, as requested by Andy Burnham this weekend, of reflection. That quote was, "Freedom is the freedom to say that 2 + 2 makes 4. If that is granted, all else follows. That's to say that freedom comes from truth." Jason Arday, may he rest in peace, was a fantasist. In life, Jason Arday lied, and in death his supporters are continuing that lie, which means we get nowhere. I'm not going to go into the whys and wherefores and was it anything to do with Jason Arday's skin colour, because all of that is separate from the truth. The truth is that Jason Arday was put in that position by the DEI kings and queens of the United Kingdom, and specifically at Cambridge University. You may have seen over the weekend, Common Sensors, people like you, me, Mark, Pooch, Mike Graham have all been criticised for bringing about the untimely death of Jason Arday because we had the audacity to notice. Like Orwell said, freedom comes from being able to say that 2 + 2 = 4. It does not equal 5. As tragic and as saddening as Jason Arday's death is, it still doesn't take away from the fact that he was a fantasist. And Jason Arday took his life. Not me, not you, not even the people at Cambridge University. Sadly, Jason Arday made that decision. We live in a time where vibes and feelings overtake everything. And I would bet my bottom dollar before it's taxed for its wealth that by the time this week is out, the narrative would have been well and truly skewed. And you will be under a lot of pressure not to notice the history of Jason Arday and not to speak of it also. But it will never, ever change the truth. Freedom comes from truth, and long may that be the case. Well, Mark, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're bang on right, and it's why I think this channel is so important, and all sort of independent media outlets. You would think, wouldn't you, in modern Britain, that speaking the truth should be easy, straightforward, lies would easily be exposed, but alas, no. It takes a lot of courage to do it. Because to go back to my theme, day after day, we live in gaslit Britain, and there are huge rewards for going along with the fantasy, whether that is that our public finances are sustainable, they ain't, whether it was that Jason Arday is an academic genius, he wasn't anything like that, whether it's that climate change is going to put us all 10 meters underwater within 2 or 3 years, it won't. But there is a huge price to be paid, and it requires a lot of courage and a lot of bravery to actually call it out. And we need more of the little boys like you and me, Coxie, who's going to point at the emperor and say, "You have no clothes." That's what's needed, and you did it brilliantly there in Cox's box. May Jason Arday rest in peace. May the battle for the truth go on.
Absolutely, Mark, and well said. And we say that with great sincerity also, Mark. This is not us pandering to our audience. This is not us performatively telling people what we think in order to get people to watch this. One of the reasons we want you to watch this is you are going to get 100% truth from our opinions. That can be challenged. It should be challenged. It's why we have a comment section. It's why we read it out. It's why we don't all agree on things, and that's where truth comes from. I think that's incredibly important, and irrespective of what happens, Jason Arday's legacy should be that it was right to notice. Anyway, let's move on. We have our next guest here, and I think Mark should introduce him.
Is he arrived? Is the great man
He's
arrived?
arrived.
He's arrived. What great news. Well, let me tell you, this is back by popular demand. It was a devilish task to be able to get the link to him. Let's pull up image number 15. and you will see why we have had real difficulty. Real difficulty. I'm definitely okay. Please don't worry, says the great Patrick Basham of the Democracy Institute. I know loads of you were worried about him. He is back. Patrick, drop us some truth bombs. You have done some really intriguing polling on Donald Trump and where he presently stands in American public opinion. Now, tell our viewers, the common sensors on this channel, what the spot price is over there in the States. I've got 4 of your slides to show people. Yeah, talk us through them. I'm going to start by asking for image 9 to come up. This is Trump's approval rating. Talk us through that, Patrick, and how the devil are you? And I'm so delighted your lawyers managed to spring you out of Guantanamo.
With you, Mark. I'm doing much better than I did a few hours ago in that photo. Obviously, public, if not demand, at least public curiosity has set me free. So thank you for that. Thank you to your legions of loyal viewers. Trump's approval. Actually, our approval number for him at 41% is a little higher than many. You'd say if you put all the polling together, some of it's good, some of it's bad. You get him. Most people have him in the 30s. So he certainly averages in the 30s. We have him at 41, which is still bad, right? This is somebody who, when he was first inaugurated early in his second term, early in 2025, hit the ground running, was attempting at least to fulfill apparently every MAGA promise that he'd made. But obviously things started to go wrong for him in the second half of last year. And the wheels really started to come off this year with the Iran war, taking away from what his voters viewed as his focus on domestic issues, on what they view as America first. So you have a situation where heading a couple of months into the midterms, the incumbent party's president is not wildly unpopular, but certainly you wouldn't say he was popular. And Trump is always counter to the mainstream narrative. Trump has always polled better and done better at the polls than Republican candidates themselves. And so, with a midterm election, it's hard to get the coattails in the way you would in a presidential election. But there really aren't any coattails here to get. So the fact he's at 41%, really suggests not the greatest situation right now for his Republican Party.
Patrick, that's really interesting. There's an interesting question here. I've been preempted by Jean de Valette 8860. Maybe we can pull that chat up, because this was exactly what I was going to ask you. What's the context for this? I don't know whether this is particularly good or particularly bad. If I was to compare it to, say, UK prime ministers, I would have thought, generally speaking, in recent years, being at minus 15%, most of them would have ripped your arm off for it, right? That wouldn't be seen as too bad at all. But if memory serves, in America, it's kind of a little bit, when you're doing presidential approval ratings, of a sort of half and half measuring a prime minister and half measuring a monarch, right? So American presidents tend to score higher in approval ratings than British prime ministers. But how does this compare, I don't know, to Biden or Obama or George Bush Sr. or George Bush Jr. or Ronnie Reagan? Is this about where you expect to be, as you're getting into your, halfway through your second term, or is it worse?
It's not where you'd hope to be, but it's where most presidents you could expect to be, because most presidents naturally sadly become more unpopular, less popular as their terms go on. And this has happened to Trump here in his second term. Biden was in this kind of range in 2022. Obama was in this kind of range in 2010 and 2014. In Obama's case, he recovered just in time for the 2012 presidential election. Biden didn't recover in time in 2024. So there's nothing unusual or spectacular about Trump's numbers, but it doesn't alter the fact that Biden's party lost the House, narrowly, but lost the House in 22, and Obama's Democrats, they got shellacked in 2010 and 2014, right? So there's nothing about this number for the president and his party to be happy about. Only that, well, yes, it could be worse. He could be at 30% or 25%. And there is, yes, something to the head of state factor. He's both head of state and head of government. right? So there is something of that. And that is why you'll see so much attempts to act statesmanlike on the part of most presidents, whether they do it artfully or inartfully, as a way of boosting that part of the number and separating their head of state performance from their head of government performance.
Got it. We got some more data. This was fascinating. I think this shows, okay, each war, I guess, is different, but a pretty remarkable shift in American public opinion over the past 2 or 3 decades. Let's pull up image number 10. Trump should declare victory and end the war with Iran today. Here is what the voters say. 65% say yes, 32% say no. What are we to make of that, Patrick? And I mean, it's interesting the way you've worded it. He should declare victory and end the war, not declare defeat and end the war, or declare a tie. I think that's the official verdict. That's the official verdict on the Vietnam War, wasn't it? That it was a tie. But this is an overwhelming majority of Americans who want this over.
It says a number of things. First and foremost, it reminds us of how America feels about the war. America has always been opposed to the war. They've become even more so. That sentiment is hardened. So if you poll, was the war worth it? Is the war a good idea still? You get this 2/3 to 3/4 of the country saying, no, it's not worth it. No, it was a bad idea. No, it's going poorly. We asked it this way because those of us who've been aware from the get-go that Trump was on a political loser here at a minimum, regardless of how the war went, he should have, after a few days, because he was never Trump's problem. The corner he's painted himself into politically is he cannot bring himself to say that hasn't gone well. We've lost. We're just going to get out. Minimize, stop the bleeding, literally and figuratively. So what he should have done after a few days, when it was clear things were going down the toilet, is to say, we've won. We're going home. The end. Right. Now, since then, that is still what he always should have done and should do. So we put it in those terms, that he's not to say, okay, we failed. Trump says we failed. What do you think of the war? But Trump says we've won, and he's ending it. What do you think? And people, even couched in the terms of victory, people still think that it should be over. Should be over right now. Simple as that. I mean, this is just such a drag on him and his party. And it's partly because the war has gone badly, but it's more because people know that it's taken his focus and attention away from domestic issues, especially the economy.
Now, this was an interesting one because in November, you've obviously got your crucial midterm elections in the states, which will elect senators and Congress. And you can tell us a bit at the moment how much that might be in the balance. But let's bring up image 11 and hold it on the screen. This might be a route back for the GOP, right, for the Republican Party. Let's suppose Trump does end the war in Iran prior to November. How would that impact people's likelihood to vote? Well, 21% say they're more likely to vote Republican if the war ends, and 9% less likely. 70% no difference. I guess those people have made their mind up one way or another. But that's quite a stark gap, isn't it, Patrick? If the war ends before these crucial elections in November to the House of Representatives and to the Senate, perhaps the Republicans get a meaningful bounce and, I don't know, manage to keep control of one or other. What's the meaning here? And will this be weighing with President Trump as he navigates his way to those November elections?
It has this result, this question, this answer tells us that the Republicans have more hope if they end the war and if they end the war sooner, right? You've got the Democrats in that 70%. They're never going to change their minds whether they're against the war, but whether it's going on or not, or how it's going. But what Trump has lost, and he's lost in the 2024 coalition, are the newer voters that joined him just a couple of years ago. So we're talking about primarily working class voters, younger voters, Hispanic and African American voters especially, and formerly independent voters, and many formerly Democratic leaning independent voters. People who've pretty much given up on politics, decided Trump was worth a chance. They have decided since the war began that they may have made a mistake. And so they are the ones who might come back if he ends the war now, whether he declares victory or not, right? They may. Right now, they're not running to vote for the Democrats, who as a party are even more unpopular than the Republicans are. But what they're going to do at the moment is sit it out. And a midterm election in America is about turnout. It's less about persuading the other side to vote for you than it is to motivating your side to turn out. And this is the Democrats' inbuilt advantage. They're both not the incumbent party at a time when most people don't think things are going great. But their voters hate Trump more every single day. They have done for the last 10 years. They will turn out regardless. The problem for the Republicans is that although the majority of Trump and Republican voters are going to turn out and vote, a good slice, especially these new 2024 voters who are really annoyed about the war, in fact, feel betrayed by Trump over the war, if they stay home, it's very, very hard for the Republicans to win those close races. The good news for the Republicans is that with the districts being redrawn in many states over the last number of months, they're probably going to gain or at least hold on to maybe a dozen seats that they otherwise might have lost. And there are only a couple of dozen true toss-up seats in America because the districts are drawn to so benefit the incumbent party in that respective area. So it's probably it could still end up being quite tight, but it's definitely advantaged Democrats.
Yeah, and the last slide we've got from your polling, Patrick, shows that image number 12, sort of spot price at the moment, asking voters if the midterm election for the US House were held today, which party's candidate would you vote for? An 8% lead. I mean, that is quite a lead in American politics, right? That is a substantial lead.
Yeah, it is. You rarely get anything close to or around double digits. And right now, that means the Democrats, given a uniform swing, they would win back the House, perhaps comfortably. But here's the caveat about these numbers, as you and your viewers watch and listen and read them over the next couple of months. The Democratic vote is so inefficient, and the Republican vote is so efficient in America that if the Republicans are down 3.5 points on this national poll, they probably can hang on. If it's between 3 or 4 and 5 or 6, it's going to be real tight. And if it's 7 or 8 or more, the Democrats will win. So this is good news for the Democrats, but it's only just across the line where they can actually think to themselves, yeah, we probably got this. Obviously, all to play for still with a couple of months to go.
Patrick, absolutely wonderful to see you. Back by popular demand, easily our most popular guest on the World Cupper show. Glad we sprung you from Guantanamo Bay. We must get you on regularly. I know you have to get up early in the morning, but I'm glad our lawyers managed to finally tunnel you out. Fantastic to have your insight. Thanks so much, my friend. Speak to you soon.
Most welcome, Mark. Your Cuban cigars are in the post.
Perfect. Thank you, Patrick. Right, let's go back to Paul because we got to hand over to another show. Interesting stuff from the other side of the pond in the balance there. I guess it is in British politics as well.
Yes, it is.
And Paul, we've got another show starting in a minute.
We have got another show. We have with Ellie Hodges. By the way, great to see Patrick Basham on. The man, the Tash, the legend. He really does articulate. I mean, I could barely see. I'm so distracted by the moustache and the clear hostage situation that he finds himself in that his statistics and stuff, I find, get lost a little bit. But what a guest, Mark. Well done. Mark, see you tomorrow, mate. From me to you, well done. Great stuff. Mark Littlewood, everybody. Well, common sense says that's not the end of your viewing today. Far be it from that, in fact. We have the Ellie Hodges show coming up very shortly. Ellie's with me now. How you doing, Ellie?
I'm great, thank you. How are you? How was your show?
It was great, actually. 2 hours, absolute jollity. Look, I understand your grandparents are watching today.
Oh, yes, they are.
My biggest fear about your grandparents is they are about the same age as me. So shall we let's say hello to your grandparents.
Okay. Hi. How are you?
What have they got names? Do you know their actual names?
Sue and Cyril.
Sim and Cyril.
Sue and Cyril.
Sue and that. I mean, that is great name. Sue and Cyril. You don't get enough. You do not get enough Cyrils anymore.
Yeah, it's a legendary name. You only meet one Cyril.
You do? I don't know any other Cyrils.
Who's more of a laugh, Sue or Cyril?
Oh, don't make me pick between my grandparents. That's crucial.
Come on, who's likely to give you the most at Christmas?
Probably Sue, but Cyril's more fun.
Wow. Wow, Sue, ever so sorry, ever so sorry. What you got coming up in today's show, Ellie?
We've got a fabulous show coming up, and I can't wait. So we've got 3 guests. We've got Niall Gardner here first, who's sitting
I'm
just
excited by
behind
that.
the
I can
camera
see
there.
Niall in my peripheral
I'm
vision.
very excited about that. So former aide to Margaret Thatcher, now works a lot on foreign policy, especially in America. So I'm really looking forward to talking about our amazing new Foreign Secretary, Ed Miliband, who I'm sure we all love. And then after that, we've got Bruce Unfiltered, who was at the live show in Clacton, who's great. We're going to be talking all about reforms, new welfare reforms, and what we think about them, if they're the right decisions, the removing PIP completely, is that really the right way to go about things? And then lastly, we've got Ted Newson, who I'm going to be talking to him all about being young in Westminster and what that's like.
Yes, you would know. I wouldn't. Yes. Thank you very much, Ellie. That's going to be a fabulous show. Please do stay tuned for that. But big thank you to me, to Luke, to Scarlett, to Pooch, to Charlotte in the background. None of this would happen without them. I'll be back tomorrow with Mark Littlewood for Littlewood and Cox. Until then, common sensors, take care and hold on to your phones.
Brilliant.
Let's go to the news.
Hello, Fiona McLeod here with your Monday bulletin from Moscow. Overnight, Russia reported one of the largest Ukrainian drone assaults of the year, with hundreds of drones targeting the Moscow region. Meanwhile, back in the UK, Reform UK has set out plans for a major overhaul of the benefits system, aiming to cut £50 billion a year. This includes banning most welfare payments for foreign nationals, even those with EU settled status, and replacing personal independence payments with a tighter system focused on the most severe cases. Rain is finally on the way after the UK's 5th heatwave of the summer, which peaked at 38 degrees Celsius and triggered widespread wildfires. The Met Office says heavy rain will soak around 60 towns and cities on Tuesday, bringing cooler, fresher conditions. Elsewhere, residents are starting to return home after devastating wildfires in places like Stourbridge. British athletes have enjoyed a strong finish at the European Championships, and the Met Police has apologised after a data error exposed email addresses of alleged Mohammed Al Fayed victims. Uvidím se později, alligator.
We're back. Hello everyone. Welcome to UK Live, and this is the Ellie Hodges show. We've just finished with Mark and Paul. I hope you all enjoyed that. And we've got a really exciting show coming up for you, as if you were just tuned in, you would have heard. So we have got Niall Gardner in the studio with me now, and then we have Bruce Unfiltered, who I'm sure you all know, who's at our Clacton live show as well. And then lastly, we've got Ted Newson coming in, and I'm going to talk to him all about being young in Westminster and what that's like. So, Niall, thank you very much for joining me in the studio today.
Pleasure,
this is your week back from the US, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And some fairly nice weather here in England, which is a change. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. How are you finding living in the US?
America's great. You know, it's a real land of opportunity. And, you know, it's really the beating heart of the free world, the leader of the free world. So, yeah, America's in great form, really. But we have the spectre of socialism on the horizon. All these democratic socialists running around who have to be defeated, has to be said.
Yeah.
And I think overall America's absolutely fine.
Have you spent much time in New York since Mamdani has been elected?
In fact, I was in New York quite recently, and New York is noticeably more dangerous. There's more rubbish on the streets. It's gone downhill under the socialists, but that's what socialists do, of course. Socialists destroy everything in their path. Mamdani, I think, is a real far-left extremist, and it's sad to see the decline in New York City. Washington, D.C., on the other hand, is vastly improving. Yeah, and that's all to do with Donald Trump's intervention in D.C. And so Washington is really a far better place to live today. New York, on the other hand, I think is moving the other direction.
And Niall, when Ed Miliband was appointed Foreign Secretary a few weeks ago, you called it disastrous for Britain. Do you still think that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no,
your mind hasn't been changed, has it?
Worse than expected, actually. You could not think of I think, a more stupid appointment than Ed Miliband as Foreign Secretary. I mean, this is somebody who has insulted the US president on multiple occasions. We cannot really repeat the sorts of things that he's been saying in the past. Miliband is no diplomat. He's also, of course, the architect of the whole net zero loony left climate change agenda. And so I think that Miliband's appointment, very controversial. He was given the job really because Andy Burnham didn't know quite where to put him.
Yeah.
I think Miliband wanted to become Chancellor. But
I think that would have been even worse.
Ultimately, Burnham opted for Healey instead. And so he's been put in the Foreign Secretary position. But Ed Miliband is the least diplomatic figure that you could put there. It's going to be a very tense relationship with the United States, I think, under Miliband. I called it a disastrous appointment. I stand by that, and I think it's even worse.
Well, let's have a look at some of the clips. We've got 2 clips here. Are you ready with them? Yeah. Yeah, so we've got 2 clips of Miliband talking about Trump, I think maybe 8-9 years ago. Let's have a look.
Funding the UN, taking on climate change. I mean, where do you even start? It's starting a trade war with Mexico today, lifting sanctions on Russia on Saturday, apparently. This is not normal times.
No, but it's not.
And her speech, and let me just say this, Kirsty, her speech was a perfectly decent speech if it had been normal times. But to align yourself so closely with his project, which is what she did, that, I think, was a mistake.
Right. If Ed Miliband was Prime Minister, 1, would you have gone?
Yes.
And 2, speaking to senior Republicans, I mean, she very clearly...
I probably wouldn't have been speaking to senior Republicans.
Well,
Look,
yeah,
I think...
but what I mean is, what would your line have been if it's about...
Well, let me put it this way. I prefer Merkel to May in the way this has been handled. Think of what Angela Merkel did the day after the US presidential election. She said, yes, a partnership with America is important, but on the basis of certain norms and values, of human rights, of commitments to equality, of things that are important. And you know why this matters?
But you don't take Tim Stanley's point that this is all, mood music for a particular audience.
I tell you what, words and signals matter. They matter to the impact on Trump, who only respects strength, and they matter to our reputation around the world.
So he just said there that if he was Prime Minister, God forbid, he wouldn't talk to senior Republicans. And we also have just seen him walking through doors with Marco Rubio. So, I mean, he's just completely gone back on all of his principles if he had any to start with, hasn't he?
Yeah, of course, Miliband, like most socialists, massive hypocrites. And he said some really stupid things in the past. But then again, this is the Labour government. The standards are incredibly low.
Yep.
Miliband exemplifies, I think, the whole disaster of the Labour project in Britain. This is a government that barely has the support of 1 in 4 Britons. It has some of the craziest, I would say, far left policies that we've ever seen in British history. Net zero is chief among them. Yeah. And Miliband, of course, is the champion of net zero. Needless to say, President Trump, the US administration, fundamentally hates anything to do with net zero. And so that's a pretty bad starting point. And also the Foreign Office has reiterated its support for the absolutely insane Chagos surrender deal.
Yeah.
And so Miliband will be trying to sell this deal that Donald Trump sank 3 times. I don't think it's exactly a sort of flying start for the new Foreign Secretary.
Do you think it's a case, though, that Trump and Miliband's relationship, it won't actually make things worse from the comments that he made? Instead, it will just be his general policy, especially towards energy? Because we've seen in the past, Trump has managed to make friends. And look at some of the stuff that J.D. Vance said in the past about Trump, for example. He doesn't seem to mind too much when people make not so nice remarks about him in the past. Instead, when it comes down to policy, and as you said, net zero is something that Trump is very much against.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because after all, initially Donald Trump got on fairly well with Keir Starmer, and I think he treated Keir Starmer as sort of a charity case in a way. I think he felt sorry for Keir Starmer. Basically, Starmer came across sort of welfare case, I think, to Donald Trump, and he took pity on him. Things deteriorated very rapidly, though. Especially with the deep divide over the Iran war, Starmer's refusal initially to allow the use of US bases on British soil for the Iran war, all of these were critically damaging, I think, to Keir Starmer's relationship with President Trump. And Trump swiftly turned against Keir Starmer. And then you throw in, of course, the whole Chagos surrender deal, which greatly angered Donald Trump. It could be the case that the Trump administration initially seeks to have a friendly, relationship with Ed Miliband as the incoming Foreign Secretary. After all, this is the US-UK special relationship. It's far bigger than any individual politician. But there are no limits to the depths of Miliband's stupidity, frankly. And so I think it's only a matter of time before, I think the knives are out in Washington for Ed Miliband.
Okay.
And I think there's been a very generous approach taken so far since his appointment, but that will swiftly change, I imagine.
Before we go on to talk more broadly about the special relationship, let's have a listen to these remarks made by Ed Miliband, which is what everyone references now. Let's have a look.
Most importantly, his values, his racism, his misogyny, his respect for authoritarian regimes and his apparent contempt for democratic regimes. And I think it is important to take a stand on this, because I do think that his values and where he stands are on the side of, they seem to be on the side of authoritarianism and not on the side of the democratic values that I think are shared across political parties in the UK. I thought it was an extraordinary number of people that came out. I think they spoke for lots of people in Britain. The thousands spoke for the millions of people in Britain who feel this way. So I think it was right to take a stand.
Was it right that he was here?
Well, I personally, if I'd been in Theresa May's shoes, would not have done it this way. I wouldn't have rushed to the White House at the first opportunity. I'm afraid it hasn't really got her anything. I almost felt sorry for her in that press conference, but it was classic Trump. He lied by claiming that him criticising her was fake news. That was a lie. He attacked the press, and he made appalling remarks about immigration and its effect on Europe. Now, to be fair, she did disagree with that, but for my liking, she was too passive. She's been too passive. And if you like, this is the moment when you're either siding with a guy who respects authoritarians, likes dictators, and comes along and tries to upend democratic countries. He did it with Merkel at the NATO summit. He did it with May here with his Sun interview. So you're either on that side or his side. I'm afraid we've looked too much on his side, really.
It just kept on going, didn't it? You didn't think it could get any worse. I mean, he's just completely abandoned any of the principles that he had. And he said there that Theresa May was being too passive by even letting him have a state visit or going to meet him. And now he's there with all of these Republicans looking like he's having a great time.
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, Miliband's remarks, absolutely disgraceful, basically saying that Trump is a dictator.
Yep.
He's saying that Trump loves dictators. He said all sorts of things about Donald Trump. And, I do think Miliband's, quite a nasty piece of work in terms of, his whole approach towards President Trump and his administration. And it's shocking that he's in the position that he is. After all, the US-UK partnership is the most important alliance for the United Kingdom. And you appoint somebody who has absolutely trashed over and over again the President of the United States. And so you cannot think of somebody worse, actually, than Ed Miliband to put in that role. And it does demonstrate, I think, also the short-sighted thinking of Andy Burnham. Burnham looks really clueless on the world stage. In fact, he barely has any interest, I think, in what happens in the world, frankly. And Burnham has no experience on the international stage. And his appointment, of course, of Miliband is a reflection of that. It's amateur hour with this Labour government, really. It's shockingly bad. And I have to say that, I think we're in for a very rocky road in terms of US-UK relations under Burnham. And Miliband is somebody who has absolute disdain, not only for President Trump, but everyone who votes Trump supports him.
Yeah.
And, how can you have some kind of productive relationship with the US with a figure like Miliband in place? I think it's impossible.
I mean, if I was Ed Miliband and I hated Trump that much, and I'm sure his opinions haven't changed that drastically since then to now, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near that guy. I wouldn't want to work with him. I wouldn't want to work with the administration. But he seems completely fine to do that. But now he's been to Washington. He's met Marco Rubio, and Marco Rubio has said that they had constructive talks. Could some of the fears maybe have been a little bit overblown?
Well, Marco Rubio, who I think is a great Secretary of State, he's extremely polite, diplomatic, and so naturally, I think he's going to, have a friendly initial meeting with Ed Miliband, and that's to be expected. But the reality is, behind the scenes, there are deep-seated tensions between the two sides, and I know for a fact that across the Trump administration, there's great skepticism with regard to Ed Miliband, Andy Burnham, with regard to the entire Labour government. There's a lot of sympathy, of course, in the United States for figures like Nigel Farage and for reform. And the Labour government, I think, is seen as it's a lightweight government. It's destructive. It's also seen as a sinking ship, really, that eventually is going to be replaced. But the United States has to deal with this government in the meantime. Hence, the initial meeting between Marco Rubio and Ed Miliband. But there are definitely very significant tensions, and the relationship with Keir Starmer towards the end of Starmer's premiership became impossibly difficult.
It seems that when the actual decisions are made or policies introduced, that's when Trump stops liking them. But he seems pretty relaxed to Andy Burnham so far. He's kind of praised him on some of the plans that we don't know if actually are going to happen regarding energy. Do you think that Trump and Andy Burnham could maybe have a good relationship, or no chance in hell?
So again, I think that in the case of Burnham, just like Keir Starmer, he's viewed as a bit of a charity case in Washington.
Charity case is so brutal.
And, I think that President Trump has been very generous in his remarks so far about Burnham. But it's only a matter of time before Burnham, I think, starts to burn bridges. And at the end of the day, towards the end of Starmer's premiership, Trump was not on speaking terms with Starmer. And he viewed Starmer as a complete idiot, which is actually very accurate, which is what most British people think. And with Andy Burnham, I mean, no doubt that the view of the new British Prime Minister will fall significantly in the months to come. The more that Burnham actually says about foreign policy, national security issues, and so on, I think the less the Americans are going to like him. And let's face it, I don't think Burnham's a very serious figure on the international stage. He has no experience. And it's hard to see how he's going to build some strong relationship with President Trump. Ideologically, they're in different universes. And Burnham represents the kind of socialism, of course, that Trump is fighting in America. And every day President Trump is condemning socialism, communism. Well, Andy Burnham represents all of that. And so, I think that Burnham's relationship with Trump is going to be very difficult.
Okay, and let's say you're Foreign Secretary. What plans would you make? What steps would you take to kind of bring back this special relationship? Because some people would say we don't even have a special relationship anymore, and actually we kind of flatter ourselves too much by saying that we're of use to the US.
I think the special relationship, despite Keir Starmer and Burnham and so on, Labour, it's still very, very strong in terms of the big picture, because it is the most powerful bilateral partnership in the world.
Yeah.
And there are huge ties of, history, language, culture. There are tremendous economic ties, huge levels of investment on both, between the US and the UK, on both sides of the Atlantic. The economic relationship is very important. So regardless of who the Prime Minister is, also the King's visit to Washington a few months ago was a huge success, and I was there at the White House when the King arrived and President Trump gave
Tell us
his
about that.
welcome
That's
address.
exciting.
Yeah, it was an amazing day. Apart from the weather was actually unfortunately quite bad, but it was an incredibly successful event, and President Trump delivered some of the best remarks of his presidency, welcoming the King and acknowledging the fact that Britain has played such an important role in America's history, setting aside the minor, dispute during the Revolutionary War and so on. But President Trump paid tribute really to the British legacy in the United States, and there are 70 to 80 million Americans who have British ancestry, That's a huge number. There are more people of British ancestry actually in the United States than there are people living in the United Kingdom today. That's a striking fact. And so the King's visit was a tremendous success. He was very warmly welcomed. Even the Democrats gave him a standing ovation when the King spoke to Congress, and that was a great speech by the King. And so even the lefties, the socialists, who had this no kings movement in America.
They loved it.
Yeah, they were all applauding the king. So that's the power of the special relationship. It is immensely powerful. And I do think that the special relationship is very real. It works for the benefit of both sides. It's unfortunate we've got the kind of weak-kneed, useless leadership in Britain that we have at the moment. But the special relationship can be fully rebuilt and re-energized with the new Prime Minister. Quite possibly Nigel Farage as the next Prime Minister, somebody who spends a lot of time working with Britain's friends and allies in the United States. He's somebody who firmly believes in the special relationship and is very popular in America. So I think all of this can be re-energized, once the socialists are, given the boot, hopefully soon. But yeah, the special relationship is real. It works, and as the King's visit demonstrated last April, it does have immense power, and most Americans love the United Kingdom and the British people, and most Americans like the British monarchy, actually.
And when you look at kind of overall Britain's state and its place in the world at the moment, what do you think needs to change, and how can we kind of bring back what you think that we've lost?
Well, the first thing British people need to do is throw off the shackles of socialism.
Yeah.
Because socialism is incredibly destructive. And Burnham is a proud socialist. And so the British people have to reject and defeat socialism. That's the first thing. As long as you've got a socialist government, nothing good comes from it. I think secondly, Britain needs secure borders. It needs to end the mass migration and illegal migration crisis and ensure that not one single illegal migrant comes into the UK. If you don't control your borders, you're not a free sovereign nation. You're not a nation at all. President Trump has already secured America's borders. Illegal migration into the United States is zero now.
Yeah.
The southern border of the United States is nearly 2,000 miles long. Trump secured it actually within a couple of weeks after he entered office.
Yeah.
So Britain's, the mainland Britain is an island, and you can secure Britain's borders, and you've got to do that in order to, secure the future of the British people. But there are so many things that need to be done in terms of getting British self-confidence and pride in Britain back. Because right now, I think the UK is on its knees. It's in a real state of decline, actually. Under the socialists, and that's got to change.
And lastly, before you go, I put a tweet out actually the other day just saying that I think that some political parties need to be more optimistic about the future.
Yeah. Yes, I saw that tweet. Yeah.
I think that lots of political parties and politicians are always talking down this country, and I don't think they necessarily do it in a bad way. I just think that they're talking about the issues. But I think for lots of people watching this as well, especially on the right, when you're hearing stories all the time about how bad everything is, it almost makes it seem like there's nothing to fight for.
Yeah.
And obviously Trump was elected on Make America Great Again, and that's kind of optimistic in terms of we can make it great again.
Yeah.
Do you think we need more of that here?
Yeah, I thought it's an excellent tweet that you put out there, and
Thank you.
I think that there's a big difference between the United States and the United Kingdom today in terms of the overall approach. I do think in America you have a greater sense of optimism and hope, and President Trump won his election on a very optimistic message.
Definitely.
And you go back to the days of Ronald Reagan, of course. Reagan's victories were very much built on the premise that the future of America will be even better than its past. And that's very much the Trump approach also, and it works because I think voters want to listen to a positive message, in addition, of course, to fighting, fighting the left on multiple fronts, but the overall message has to be very positive. And the British people have so much to be proud of. This is a nation that just maybe 3 generations ago was the world superpower. And for 300 years, Britain dominated the world. It was the unrivaled superpower in the world. And the British people should be immensely proud of their past. And that includes pride in the British Empire, pride in the spread of civilization across the world. And this is a nation that right now, I do think Britain is on its knees. And there's a sense of overwhelming depression in the United Kingdom. You know, that has to change. And whoever is going to be the next Prime Minister has to offer a message of hope and optimism, in addition to willingness to fight the left at every opportunity and defeat them. But at the end of the day, you've got to have an optimistic, positive message about the future. And that ultimately wins.
Niall, thank you very much for joining me.
It's a great pleasure. Thanks very much, Ellie.
Thank you for giving up your time on your week back in the UK.
It's a real pleasure.
I hope you have a good rest of your stay.
Thank you very much.
Okay, should we go to the news now while we have a little break? We were speaking for half an hour. God, that time went by very, very quickly. And next we've got Bruce Unfiltered coming up and also Ted Neeson. So see you after the news.
Hello, Fiona McLeod here with your Monday Bulletin from Moscow. Overnight, Russia reported one of the largest Ukrainian drone assaults of the year, with hundreds of drones targeting the Moscow region. Meanwhile, back in the UK, Reform UK has set out plans for a major overhaul of the benefits system, aiming to cut £50 billion a year. This includes banning most welfare payments for foreign nationals, even those with EU settled status, and replacing personal independence payments with a tighter system focused on the most severe cases. Rain is finally on the way after the UK's 5th heatwave of the summer, which peaked at 38 degrees Celsius and triggered widespread wildfires. The Met Office says heavy rain will soak around 60 towns and cities on Tuesday, bringing cooler, fresher conditions. Elsewhere, residents are starting to return home after devastating wildfires in places like Stourbridge. British athletes have enjoyed a strong finish at the European Championships, and the Met Police has apologised after a data error exposed email addresses of alleged Mohammed Al-Fayed victims. Uvidím se později, alligator.
And we're back. I was just saying to the producers that I really like that new newsreader. I think she seems more energetic than the old. What was the old one called?
Edward Hughes.
Edward. I don't really like Edward Hughes. I quite like Fiona. She was quite good. Okay, we've got Bruce Unfiltered, who has been waiting for quite a while, I think. Sorry, Bruce. Hi, how are you?
That's all right. I'm very good, Ellie. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Your setup looks very, very professional there. I love it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So let's talk about Reform's announcements today. So they had a press conference all about how they're going to crack down on the welfare bill, and they also mentioned about PIP and how they're going to completely get rid of PIP. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm quite supportive of it, to be perfectly honest, Ellie, because the system needs a radical shake-up. I don't know if anyone's paid attention, but today the Telegraph have published a piece which is basically highlighting TikTok accounts, YouTube accounts, and actual websites where you can pay money to go and have your PIP assessment forms filled in correctly at different stages. So you can pay 50 quid as a one-off subscription to have what's effectively a pre-written script to fill the forms in to maximise your PIP claim. And there are other pricings on it. It's actually called pipexpert.co.uk, which basically claims it will help people secure higher payouts in 30 seconds. There are YouTube channels out there explaining to people how to do this, and they even offer a package for $149.99 that if it's rejected, they will do it for you and essentially send the claim off. So it's got to a point, I think, where the PIP system particularly is being gamed rather than for actual genuine people. So I think what Reform are doing is plausible. I don't think they're on about scrapping the PIP system. I think they want to replace it with something different. And what I find quite interesting is, I mean, literally as that press conference went live, you start to see the headlines coming out. Reform want to kill benefit claimants. They want to kill disabled people. I mean, some of the hysterical headlines that have been coming out over the last hour are utterly ridiculous. There are people publishing videos explaining how bad this is going to be, yet the policy hasn't even been published on Reform's website as of 15 minutes ago. So I don't know where these people are getting their information from. They're effectively taking sound bites of what Robert Jenrick has said, spinning it into their opinion, because obviously everything Reform does is detrimental to anyone. But when you actually look at what they're doing and what they've proposed, it isn't removal of PIP altogether. I've got some points here. They're essentially saying that they don't want to change this. They want to change the system, but make it so everything I just explained on that pipexpert.co.uk isn't happening. You know, it's pretty obvious the system is being abused, and I think what they want to do is refunnel genuine claimants into a system that works better. I know people when I worked in education who claim PIP, and I used to sit next to them. Really nice people. They use that stuff to aid them in their work or at home. And that's what it is, isn't it? It's kind of a work assistant program, I think, is probably a better description of it, or assisting you in getting back to work or helping you with your work. So they're not saying they want to get rid of it. I think they're saying they want to just maneuver it into something that makes it easier to apply for. It's more face-to-face rather than just companies providing you a script to fill these forms in.
That's really
because I think it's been... Yes, and I think the government have even admitted themselves that the entire process has got so out of kilter for what it should be that it needs a review and it needs changing. And yet, because Reform propose it, all of a sudden it's doom and gloom.
Yeah, I do think that's a good point, that the headlines are quite misleading on this, because you would just think, as I said at the start, that PIP is just being completely scrapped and nothing's, you know, going to replace it. It's the same when we talk about the Human Rights Act and everyone says, okay, you get rid of the Human Rights Act, everyone will have no rights, as if before the Human Rights Act we had no rights. So that is a good point you make there. However, I just do worry, because we have to remember that PIP isn't an out-of-work benefit. You can be working full-time and still receiving PIP. I think 20% of people on PIP are still working full-time. So that's where my issue is, and I hope that Reform go forward with this and explain exactly what they're doing, so that it doesn't stress out people who are genuinely in situations where they need to be receiving this benefit. Because I think that sometimes people can, and completely understandably, read a headline and think, oh my God, all my benefits are going to be taken away. What's going on here? So I think it's important that they explain that. But I think a good point that you just brought up was the in-person assessments, because we see this happening now all the time, where you don't have to have in-person assessments for having things like ADHD or depression or whatever it is in terms of receiving benefit. How important do you think that these in-person assessments are?
Well, very, because I think we've seen it before. There have been even then there have been documented examples. I think Channel 4 were running a documentary on Benefits Britain, and we would see people going into these in-person assessments. I particularly remember the guy who said he'd had an operation done on his back in Turkey, walks into this building, and as he goes to sit on the seat, he's like this, can't stand up, can't sit down, then walks out of the building absolutely fine. So there's definitely something wrong there. We need a system. I mean, if it's an independent review, I mean, I don't think you could do that, because you need to use the NHS and obviously medical professionals. But I think it's just got to a point where it's a form system, isn't it? It's kind of like, and I think there are jobs to be had there. Maybe they need to employ more people to do this. There could be job creation there, where you employ people in a system that's actually assessing people properly and people with genuine need. Because I think myself, yourself, and many other people will talk about this. None of us are sitting here saying we need to wipe everybody off the benefit system and no one should get anything. The system needs to be brought up to date. It needs to be truncated to a sense where it makes sense, and actual people that are, I mean, I know people who find it really complicated to fill these forms in. So simplifying the forms is a must. That has to be done. I think there are a lot of older people, retired people who maybe not retired, but there are older people who are not necessarily good with technology. Everything seems to be being pushed down the route of technology. They struggle to fill these forms in. And I've even had a comment on a video I did this morning where the guy's saying he's been informed by his doctor that he's genuinely entitled to personal independent payments, yet every time he fills the form out, he gets rejected because he's quite simply not doing it right. which is then why these sites exist, teaching people how to do it. And obviously with that, Ellie, comes a caveat of, if someone's teaching you how to do something, people are going to abuse it. And that's the problem we have. Yeah.
I think this is what people care about, is they care about the people that do genuinely deserve it not getting it, whilst other people that shouldn't really have it are getting it. And I use as an example, technically I'm diagnosed with ADHD. The fact that I could technically not be working right now and I could be getting benefits because of ADHD, I just find absolutely ridiculous. So I think it's just the list of things goes on, and I just want people that genuinely need the help to get the help, and not people that could be working, not working. And I also think for things like depression, obviously not severe depression or anxiety, working is actually great. Working keeps you busy. I know that when I'm not working or when I don't have a lot going on, I get bored out of my mind, and then I start stressing, then I start getting anxious. I think working actually helps your mental health in many ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, before I started doing this full time, I was working a 9 to 5 at a college in Suffolk for 8 years, and I probably work 14-hour days now doing what I'm doing. And I do think, and obviously not everyone gets the luxury of doing the job they want to do, and sometimes people have to do harder, more difficult jobs. But I think most people genuinely do want to go out and work. They want to earn money. But obviously there is a element of society that know how to expose these systems. They know how to game the systems. And I think all Reform are trying to do is replace something that, as I said before, is broken. The government have admitted that, and I've got some of the things here there. So they want to scrap working age PIP, scrap the health element of universal credit, introduce a health security allowance for severe, enduring and high risk disability cases, replace cash payments for some lower level conditions with disability support accounts administered locally, and then these accounts could fund things such as equipment, home adaptations, transport and personal assistance. And they want to replace multiple elements of the assessment system with one face-to-face assessment. So that's got to be beneficial to people, surely, because if you genuinely have a need for this and you're seen face-to-face by somebody, you're more than likely to get it than be expected to fill in complicated forms that some people don't understand. And I think what we need to do is completely tear this system up, start from scratch. And one of the other things that they're introducing is a return to work cover for employers with more than 5 staff. So effectively, it's an insurance covering long-term sickness absence and encouraging employers and insurers to invest in rehabilitation. So how can that be a bad thing? Like, I think it's all about encouraging to get people into work, providing the support where it's needed, simplifying the system. And don't get me wrong, I'm not going to sit here and bang on endlessly about how great this is, because there are obviously questions around the savings this could make. We're never going to see the demonstration of that until it's actually effectively up and running. And as per usual, we just know that because it's Reform UK, it's going to instantly get slapped with criticism before anyone's really analysed the benefit of it. And it's an analysing it in a way where, as we said earlier, the government has already stated that the system doesn't work. So something's got to change. Something has to change. And I think it's just because Reform UK make it as a suggestion, straight away it gets dumped all over.
And lastly, let me just ask you about this, because this is a key part of their plan. So they're going to ban most foreign nationals from claiming most benefits, but that also includes EU citizens with settled status. So what do you think about this? I mean, the majority of people, I think, would agree with this, but people that are here legally and, they're foreign nationals and yet they won't be able to claim any benefits whatsoever. What do you think about this?
Well, I think there needs to be caveats to it. So that's something that actually directly affects me. My ex is German. My son is half German. He has a British passport. So they are here under settled status. They he's obviously got British. She is. So she doesn't claim benefits as such. She works. She's self-employed. She does her jobs. But she claims some welfare support, obviously, because we have a child together. I obviously pay her money. But there's things she's entitled to, like social housing. So I don't think this is affecting that. She doesn't claim PIP or any kind of universal credit or anything. But I think there are definitely caveats that need to be explored by Reform to sort of segregate, where's the line here? Because I think we know what they're trying to do. They're trying to stop it. So illegals that are coming into this country that are being fast-tracked through a system who predominantly end up on the benefit system. I know it's not everyone, but a lot of people that come here under refugee schemes or asylum schemes or whatever we want to call it end up getting granted some kind of citizenship. We've seen that happen in the past. They inherently end up on the benefit system. They are being taught how to game these systems, and effectively it's taking money away from legitimate British citizens that need this help. And I think we have to have some stronger policy in place and some stronger laws in place to make sure that our own come first. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Bruce, thank you so much for joining me today. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Cheers, Ellie. Thank you.
See you later. Great. And now we have got Ted in the studio, ready, raring to go. Very happy. You got here a bit early, so you had to wait.
No problem.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. How are you, Ellie?
I'm good. How did you find the Clacton live show?
I thought it was fantastic. It's the first time speaking to a live audience, and it is just that much more exhilarating, actually getting live
definitely.
Applause, people nodding in the crowd. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's your home ground as well.
Yeah, it was a home game for me.
How's the reaction been to the results in Clacton?
Well, I feel like I haven't slept since the election, honestly.
Did you go to Farage Fest?
I did go to Farage Fest.
Okay,
missed
how
an
was
absolute
it?
classic.
I know.
There was a Ferris wheel, there was like a free drinks tent, fire pits everywhere, live music. But I don't want to make you jealous.
You are making me jealous.
It was pretty insane, yeah.
Yeah, I did wish I went, but I had to get back, unfortunately. Yeah, it looked right laugh. I mean, you saw Layla coming.
Jess Kane running around with Talk TV.
Oh my god! I mean, chaos. But yeah, so more generally, I wanted to talk to you about being a young person in Westminster. So I recently wrote an article. You can find that on my Substack if anyone wants to read it. And just about kind of my first couple of years in Westminster, what it's like, because it is really its own little world, and I do think that the bubble is real in many ways. So I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk to another young person about life in Westminster. So do you think the bubble is real?
Completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, the term Westminster Village it can't be said enough.
Yeah.
Like you'll go to the pub as a first time intern or something, and you'll hear all of these names being thrown around. X is having an affair with Y, and it's a bit mental, and it seems almost kind of an incestuous environment where the same names keep coming up, but eventually you go to the pub, you get to know people, and it's certainly a bubble. But I feel like without knowing it, you become absorbed into it, and you become like the rest. And it's on us as young people to kind of break that in a way. Of course we gossip, we're only human, but we need to actually tell people about it. I couldn't possibly comment. No, I'm not a gossip.
Ted's a gossip. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true that it does feel like its own little town, and I did say in my article that sometimes that can be great because you walk down the road. I was just walking down one of the streets in Westminster the other day, and you were just walking the other side of the road. Ellie, I read your article, I loved it, and I thought that exactly explains what the article was talking about. But it can be good, but it can also be bad for many reasons, because if you go wrong, everyone knows very quickly, don't you think?
Yes, I mean you make one misstep and that is going to be hanging over you.
Yeah.
There's a real toxicity about it. You make a kind of misstep, or maybe you have a relationship that goes the wrong way, and you just know that in any of the given Westminster watering holes, you are going to be the topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Especially if you've made an honest mistake. So that is a bad thing, and I've heard of people kind of being hounded out by it, or their mental health suffering.
Really?
Obviously, Westminster is a kind of 24/7 environment. When you're not at work, you're at the pub, it's long hours. It's a lot of socialising, which is good for people like you and me.
Yeah.
But people who are kind of more reclusive, it can certainly get to them.
It's like the socialising in many ways is actually part of the job as well, because especially if you work in the media, for example, me wanting to find guests for this show, if I go down to the Westminster pub, I can find plenty very quickly. But for some people, you don't need to, but I guess it's also part of the networking as well. When you first kind of arrived into Westminster, was it all quite crazy? Did you adapt quite quickly to it?
Well, I think it was a real culture shock, because coming out of university, I left university a few months before I graduated. I did graduate, but essentially to take up an internship, and I was kind of really surprised that going to the pub around Westminster was just like being at uni, and the kind of, just like being in a sports society and you get the gossip from the lacrosse girls or the netball girls and people like that, it was almost exactly the same. And for someone who was in cricket society, that kind of put me at ease.
Yeah.
But it's a bit like, gosh, this is supposed to be an adult world, and there's so much
it's a secondary school
going around.
It
it's
does
a
feel
total
like a
secondary
school in many ways. I'm not saying that serious things don't happen, they do, but I do think the socialising element to it is very gossipy and very secondary school-like. Yeah, I mean, it is crazy when you first arrive and you have to adapt to it very quickly. I mean, I've only been in Westminster for a couple of years and I'm already kind of completely adapted to it. Everything is normal. But when you speak to people that are, for example, doing internships at the IEA, I mean, you just hear them, and especially if you're not from London and you're from up north or down south, wherever it is, and you kind of arrive in the centre of Westminster, it can be very overwhelming. But let's talk about some of these front pages today, because I've got these with me. So this one I think is really interesting. This one actually from the Daily Mail, not from Daily Mail, from The Sun. There you go, finally got it. So this is Henry Novet's killer, and he's going to be allowed prison-to-prison video chats with his mum, who's also in jail. I mean, this is just completely ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, his mum stroke accomplice.
Yeah, exactly.
Who obviously hid the knife.
Yeah.
She was aiding and abetting a murderer.
So shocking.
And the punishment for that is constant contact with her murderer son.
Yeah.
So, no, I think it's totally unjustified. Whichever judge has come up with that verdict, he needs some serious scrutiny.
Definitely.
But it's just so depressing. Us Brits can feel like you almost put something out dodgy on social media and you're at risk.
Yeah.
And we've got a killer, a genuine killer.
A genuine killer,
getting access to his mum. I'm sure we'll hear in a couple of months he's getting all kinds of creature comforts like we heard about with Ruda Cabana.
Yeah.
But it really does make you lose faith in the justice system, and that needs to be fixed and quick.
It really does. And I mean, I was listening to Mike's show actually this morning, and I think he made quite a good point that instead of kind of automatically getting these privileges and then them being taken away from you if you misbehave in prison, you should actually have to earn the privileges. If they're going to give out these privileges anyway, you should have to have good behaviour in prison. Do you think that's kind of a good idea?
Totally agree. I mean, there was a story that came out about 6 months ago about prisoners getting a chocolate allowance.
Yeah,
getting little bags of
why?
sweets. And
why
is that the default?
Yeah.
I think ultimately prison, you should realise that you're being punished, and for an awful lot of people, it's like, oh, I'm seeing my mates here, I'm getting 3 square meals a day, I'm being kept safe, I've actually got home. And it's not the deterrent it was set up to be. So we do need to give prisoners a kind of incentive for being good rather than kind of just being punished further for being bad.
And we also have this situation where we're having really quite dangerous prisoners being released early because we just don't have enough space in prison. I mean, it's absolutely shocking that this is the case, and I just find it really sad. I mean, I can't remember what the figure was the other day, but thousands and thousands of domestic abusers being released, and I mean that is just absolutely shocking. Imagine being a woman that's actually, or a man that's gone through that and they've had to live with this person being abused sometimes for years and years. They finally got put behind bars and then they're released and put back into the community. I mean, we saw that with the rape gangs, but I mean it's just absolutely shocking. And what is the solution to this? Because it is really hard to kind of, what do we do? But I always make the point that during COVID we were able to build hospitals quite quickly, temporary hospitals. Why can't we do that with prisons?
Totally agree. As long as they're secure, we should be setting up Nightingale prisons.
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
Making sure everyone's kept inside, kept monitored. I mean, why monitor the rest of the population rather than monitoring the criminals?
Yeah.
If we know that these people have done wrong, they ought to be highly scrutinised by the state. It shouldn't. We shouldn't all be punished and take reductions in our freedom just because a certain amount of bad apples are let out prematurely.
Yeah, and it's a situation where if you are someone who is likely to commit crimes, why would you not do it? If you see prisoners being released early, them getting privileges in prison, I mean the list goes on, and I think that also we have all these petty crimes happening all the time, and I speak about this constantly because it really, really frustrates me when people are shoplifting, bunking trains.
And they get a free pass.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, oh well. I mean, I've literally seen people steal from a Sainsbury's, walk out, and the security guard just stands there and just kind of watches them, maybe makes like a little, oh, don't do that. But there's no actual deterrent. And I think that it's only human nature that people will keep doing it if there's no deterrent. There's no reason for them to stop.
Well, I've had that in Westminster before, where you see someone shoplifting, and you kind of point to the security guard, and it's like, are you seeing this?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, we can't touch them.
Yeah, it is just the breakdown of society more generally, and I hate to be so kind of down. I really like to be optimistic, but something needs to change in terms of the culture that we have at the moment.
We need
because
some enforcement.
just in general as well, just rudeness from certain people. I hate to go on a bit of a rant here, but people who are on their phone on the train, oh my God, it actually drives me insane. I had, on my journey back from Clacton actually, I tweeted about it and it went quite viral actually. It's one of those tweets, you know, when you just post something in rage and that goes viral, but something you've worked on for weeks gets about 2 likes. But I just posted about, I was sat on the train, opposite me, this group come on, they're all on their phones with speakerphone talking to someone in a different language at full volume. And there was like 3 different calls going on. One, I don't know what language it's in, one was English, one was something else. And I just thought, like, this is actually driving me insane. Do you not think of the other people that are on this train?
Yeah, I bet they didn't pay for a ticket either.
No, exactly. But do you not just think it shows the breakdown in society because people have a feeling that they can just do whatever they want because there's not going to be any social consequences?
There's just no kind of culpability anymore. And you're genuinely putting yourself at risk if, say, you're sat across from someone who's blasting like drill music and you're like, mate, can you please turn that off?
Do you not like drill music?
Not a fan. Not really a fan.
What's your music?
Ooh, bit of everything. Country music, jazz.
Country music.
I'm quite versatile.
Really? Okay,
not
then
drill,
not drill. Or any rap music? Or Eminem, you know?
When I was younger, I used to be into the kind of like South London drill.
Oh my God! There is no way Ted is sat there with South London drill. Sorry, that's quite funny. That is quite funny. Yeah, sorry, I don't know how I'm going to come back from that. That was really funny.
Revelation.
That is a revelation. Breaking news, Ted listens to South London drill. Sorry, that's hilarious. Okay, moving on. So I was just talking to Bruce. I don't know if you could hear about reforms, new plans on the welfare bill, how they're going to tackle it, and benefits more broadly. Did you have a chance to listen to it? What do you think about their new
I didn't listen to the press conference, but just immediately, you know, it's reform, so they're going to jump on it. Anything that hasn't been spelled out in the most obvious terms is going to be picked apart by someone like Fraser Nelson, and he'll say, no, we can afford all the welfare that we want, and PIP's actually brilliant, and a whole load of rubbish like this. So they do need to be really, really thorough. On my walk over here, I got sent I think it's 52-page policy document on it. I need to read that a bit later, but clearly it's quite thorough.
That sounds fun to read.
Clearly it's quite thorough. We'll see how that goes, whether anything is left unanswered, but ultimately it's about not leaving a kind of a gap. Because I do think on the kind of EU citizen thing that you mentioned, we shouldn't be differentiating between Europeans and non-Europeans. It's like, if you're not English, you shouldn't really be claiming welfare. I mean, I think there are a certain amount of passes you should be able to give people that are just general courtesy. Say if they're disabled, something like that. But ultimately, we do need to kind of put British people first. The welfare bill, I think it's going to be 400 billion by 2030. We've got to do something about that.
We do.
It's almost a bit of a shame that Reform aren't touching the pensions, but that's their core
so
voter block.
what would you do with the pensions?
Oh, we've got to do something about the triple lock, Ellie. It's just...
Really?
It's probably the most contentious issue in politics at the moment.
Would you scrap
it's
it?
not being talked about. I would scrap it.
Really? That's interesting. Okay. Why?
It's full identity politics from me. Like, I'm a young person. If we keep the triple lock, chances are I'm not even going to get a state pension, let alone a triple locked one. So even putting it down to a double lock, which is just inflation or wage growth, is going to save us something like tens of billions of pounds over a 5 to 10 year time period. And I know it's not going to make me very popular on this channel.
Yeah, no. I think it's good. I want people to come. Don't worry, you've got Dan Hodges tomorrow. You're going to be fine, Ted. I think it's an interesting conversation, but the point that I always make is, young people a lot of the time do act as if pensioners are getting so much money. They aren't getting.
It does
a
feel
lot
a bit
of money.
vindictive, I will say.
It's not a lot of money at all. It's like £250 a week, I think. It's not. It's not a lot of money to if you're living off of that. It's really not. So I think I don't want to get in this situation where we're just always saying that pensioners are getting loads and loads of money, because that's not the case either. And I do think that we should protect pensioners, people who have kind of put into the system all of their life, should get something back at the end of it. So it's an interesting conversation, because I do think that you have a point in many ways that we are spending so much money on it.
Well, a big part's the public sector pensions as well. So that needs to be dealt with. But I do agree that the triple lock, kind of, when you take it down to the individual and you're talking about your grandma who maybe hasn't saved, or her husband's died and she's getting maybe a couple of £100 a week, that doesn't seem like enough. And we should be rewarding people who have paid into the system all their lives. But when you're rewarding people who haven't, or giving people money where maybe they've worked for the civil service for a couple of years and now they get way more than the average pensioner, that's the bit that we need to clamp down on.
Okay, and let's talk kind of quickly before we wrap up the show more generally about young people. And I remember, I think I went on LBC and it was, do young people have it worse? Do we have it worse off than previous generations? Do you think that we do have things really bad, or?
It's a really, really nuanced take, because you look at the economics that people are putting out there, and we've never lived in a more prosperous time. We can afford a telly off a week's wages, which is like, we've never had that before. But you look at things like the job market, like the housing market. I've just moved to London, and the amount of rent that you pay is just ridiculous. So there are an awful lot of factors that are bringing young people down that can be solved, but they're going to have to be solved over a serious amount of time. There's a real kind of stereotype of this turning into a culture war issue, where boomers will say, young people are awful, young people are so complacent.
This is my problem. I don't want to get into a situation where, and I think that lots of commentators do this, where it's kind of younger people versus older people. As you said, older people thinking the younger generation are all massive lefties and it's their fault for everything, and then the younger generation saying, you're the reason I can't afford a house, blah, 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 and hating on the older generations. And I really don't want that to happen, because I spend a lot of time with kind of older people, and I think it's great. I think you can learn so much from older people, and I've always kind of gravitated towards people who are older than me anyway.
For the most part.
Yeah, exactly, and you can learn so much, and I don't want that kind of to change, where older people won't speak to younger people and younger people won't speak to older people. That would be really sad if that happens, but we're nearly at the end of the show, unfortunately. Let's read out some comments, shall we, have you got some comments?
Yeah.
Let's read out some comments before we wrap up. This hour's gone so quickly, I can't believe it. He has a point, Laura said.
I have a point.
He has a point.
Glad to know I'm talking some common sense.
Ellie has really come into her own, and what not to like about TED. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, I've got more confident and more relaxed. Great show, Ellie. Thank you so much. Keep in mind, going to be doing a show every day this week apart from Wednesday. Tomorrow we'll have Dan Hodges in the studio. Don't worry, it's not my dad, it's not my brother, we're not related, but it's going to be two Hodges in the house, Hodges v Hodges really. So he will be in the studio tomorrow, and then we'll also have someone else. Great to see these young people from a 71-year-old. Thank you. I like Ellie's diplomacy. Oh, that's very nice. I've never thought of myself as diplomatic, but thank you very much. Ellie is amazing. She thinks for herself on pensioners rather than just accepting the anti-pensioner propaganda. Ted, you're pushing propaganda.
The spinner himself.
The villain of Ted. Thank you very much. I will always think for myself. 2 hours of Ellie, please. Oh, we will see. We'll see. I go on holiday after this week for a week, and then I'll be back for September, and we'll properly launch the show, and hopefully maybe even every day for 2 hours. Great scoop, Ellie. Thank you very much. Oh, these are so lovely comments. Thank you so much. I hope you're all having enjoyed the show. First show of the week. We've got so much coming up this week. I'm really looking forward to it. You're both great examples of younger people with common sense. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. I think me and Ted both think for ourselves. So I think it'll be interesting to see what we disagree on as well, actually. I think there'll be some things we disagree on, definitely. Definitely. And it's important that we have debate, which is why I'm getting Dan Hodges on tomorrow. I want to be having actual serious debate on the show, but also being able to have a joke and not take things too seriously and be optimistic about the future. And I know that lots of you are commenting saying it's great to see two young people. I've had some emails as well saying it's great to see a young person being optimistic. Not the awful Dan Hodges. Don't do this to me. Don't. No, I'm having him on the show because it's important that we do have a conversation with people that we disagree with. And don't worry, I won't give him an easy time. I won't give him an easy time at all. I hope Ellie gives him some tough questions. I will give him, sorry, I've got this on my laptop as well. I will give him some tough questions. Don't worry, I'm polite with it. Yeah, I will, of course, of course. Right, so I'm going to have to end the show now. It's 1:02. I've gone 2 minutes over. So thank you all very much for joining me today, and I hope to see you all tomorrow for a very fun show, hopefully. And I'll be on the rest of the week except for Wednesday. So thank you all for, sorry, my earpiece is falling out. So thank you all for joining me, and I will see you again tomorrow at 12. See you there. Hello? What the fuck? Don't know what the hell just happened, something crazy. Yeah. Well done, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you, Ellie. Well done for today. Are you going to be here tomorrow? Yeah, we'll both be here. See you then, bye. I don't know what the hell's going on. What's up? I'm trying to open Paul and Mark's show.
That was so good.
It's this one.
Oh. Hold on, I've got to finish because I'm disappearing here.
You live?
Yeah. I'm off.